Newsflash, not fake news.
Say something about it, Pete. What do you think?
It was great.
All right, good. Moving on.
Are you okay?
My soul.
Devil's in the system, guys.
We need to stop and pray. Good evening and welcome to The Brook on Canaan Radio, episode number 10. It's good to be back in the studio with all the folks. Brother David, Pastor, Brother Peter, Mrs. Reeves, Jewel, Courtney, Kaylee, and JT up in the booth. You can interact with us today if you join us on YouTube. You can interact using the live chat, and that's youtube.com/Canaan Radio/live. And you can hop in and say hello. You can also go to listen.canaanradio.com and join us there as well. 920-940-8275 is the phone number. You can text us a song request during the show, or you can send us a question for the final segment of the evening. This season, we've had the segment, The Third Degree. So you can send us the hard questions, and you can either send that as a text or put it right in the chat, and we will do our best to answer it. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Doing good.
Swimmingly.
Good.
Literally.
You're swimming?
The swim here.
Oh, we've had a lot of rain this week.
Yes. I think it was all. We were in Wyoming the whole week, and it rained the whole time.
Every day.
Just about the whole time. So.
Kind of slowed the work on the camp, huh?
A little bit?
A little bit. Can't complain. We haven't had rain for 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it rained in April.
No,
Maybe.
not really.
Yeah.
We didn't have any Mayflowers from April showers.
Decent amount of snow earlier this year, through February, but after that, March and April, pretty dry. So,
Making up for
Does
it.
anybody know how many inches of rain we've got last week and a
Pull that a
half?
little bit
It's been
closer
over
there,
six.
Pete.
Six,
Yeah, I can't hear you,
6 plus
Pete.
inches.
Got to get it right up in the grill.
There you go. Get
Right
up
up
in there.
there.
6+ inches in the last.
week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a lot.
I saw the flood watch, but I didn't realize it was
Flood
6 inches.
Yeah. It's not too bad.
Did you already say, someone already say that we had a
levees did
record-breaking
not
rain
break.
day?
We did, yes.
Did anybody say that? We had a record-breaking rain day. I remember which day it was, but it was basically the most rain we've had all at once in 30 years.
What day was
On
that?
that
days
day.
ago.
It was for that day, though.
Yeah,
Thursday.
24
That's
hours.
what I'm saying.
24 hours.
It wasn't like a
that day.
all-time record
In one day.
for the date. Like, we had never gotten more rain on that day. I read it because it sounded like a lot more.
Yeah, it's not as big of a deal as.
Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Oh, if
So
it
it's
was
like,
that
I
day
think it
in
was like,
history.
I think
So
it was
it's like if today it didn't rain and then next year it did rain. We
Yes.
got way more rain.
Yes.
Than we did last year, yeah.
So it was a record for the day of
Trying to
May
find something
7th or something like
to
that.
It might have
make
been.
things sound
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Hey, it's the weather.
I don't mind
Make it
rain
sound.
if it's not cold, when it's cold out. So it was colder here, or colder in Wyoming.
About 10 degrees cooler.
Yeah, almost
wow.
20.
Yeah, could have been.
So that rain was like every time you get hit with it was cold. So,
40s and 50s over there?
yeah, 40, 41 or something like that. You guys were 61, we were 41.
Yeah.
But very cool.
It's pleasant here. Just swimmingly pleasant.
So, lessons to learn about buying a camper.
Chapter 1.
That should be a
Episode
program.
1 of 10.
Campers are built, mass-produced, and then sent to wholesalers. Is that what they are? Wholesalers?
Retail.
Retailers.
Retailer. Yeah.
Anyway, so when you buy one, you better do a thorough inspection yourself. Don't let them push you through showing you paperwork and saying they inspected it. You inspect it. And I would suggest always telling them to put a ladder up on top, even if it's a brand new unit. Say, put a ladder up, I'm going up on the roof. And look at all of the seals of the ceiling around the each one of the windows and the stink
Skylights.
pipes, skylight, refrigerator vent, air conditioner unit. look at everything. And if they're pulling away from the edges of those things, tell them you're not going to take it until it's done right. So I spent a whole week out at Camping World this week. I think
And still brought it home needing fixed.
I have less hair now than I have. But they were trying to get things passed through warranty, and so when you're waiting, and they don't use the phone. Everything's email, and then you have to wait 30 minutes, and hopefully there's a return email. That's if the person's in the office and answering their emails. So finally, I just was like, guys, I'm taking my trailer, and I made them. We had a converter in my electrical wouldn't charge, so the converter was bad. They had one there at Camping World on the shelf, the very one we need. But Heartland wants to send the same one to you. They don't want to use the one that Camping World has because they can charge more. They get more by turning it in through the warranty process if it's theirs. Camping World buys their same exact one, but from the distributor, and they get them a little bit cheaper. And so they were trying to decide. Finally, I was so upset and distraught. I was bothered. I didn't lose my Christianity, but they knew I was upset. Finally, the guy said, "You know what? This is crazy. All the things you've been through. We're just gonna put this one in, and if Heartland doesn't like it, we'll eat it. We'll eat it. We'll pay for it." So I said, "Good. That's a good deal. Then we're gonna give you free propane for waiting." And so they went out and topped off the propane things. That was nice. That's about $20-some a tank. So that was $40. That's nice. Only problem is they cost because they turned the tanks off and they never turned them back on. The freezer and the refrigerator wasn't running because it runs on propane. So we lost about $50 worth of food. It was just one of those kind of weeks. And so, and then the new truck I have to pull that, it's great. It works. It just pulled it like it was nothing. The only thing is for my rear view mirror on that trailer or backup camera, you plug it in through the old traditional cigarette lighter accessory thing. Well, GMC decided on the 2024s they weren't going to put them in the trucks anymore. So
there's no cigarette lighter, which is great because we don't smoke cigarettes.
Cigars, but not cigarettes.
So much more sophisticated.
I ordered one on Amazon, and it should be here Monday, and I'm going to put one in myself.
He has a regular plug outlet, so we were kind of fighting over because I needed it for my computer, and he needed it for the camera.
Wow. New technology.
Yeah.
Out with the old. Seriously, they got rid of the plug-in adapter, the 12-volt adapter for what?
Oh, and then I suggest if you ever buy a camper, they come with the bathrooms and the toilets, and the toilets are like real small. So I had them put a regular sized toilet in, which is nice.
That's a good option.
Brother Jeff wants to know what kind of truck it is.
GMC Denali HD 2500. Jeff.
Diesel. That's nice.
All black GMC.
It's all black.
Not quite.
No black.
Get one of these. Get one of those. You don't have to put a hole in anything.
Well, I only have one plug.
You just get a splitter.
Yeah, just get a power strip.
Well, do what you got to do.
That's what I did. I bought a power strip at Ross for less. But I got one that's coming that you insert it in an empty area of your dash. Gotcha. So it's going to be...
I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments. Pastor Arcan.
crying all over all this hardship. Yes.
The struggle's real, brother. Don't make light of it.
Persecution. 2 small toilets.
It's the ministry, bless God.
What a blessing. Well,
Joel Osteen probably doesn't have one of those.
no, he probably, never mind.
Sometimes you just have fun reading the comments.
Yeah.
We're just here for the
Here,
comments,
just watch
to be
it.
honest.
That's
Just
right.
watch us read the comments. The first
Feels
segment.
So tomorrow's our last day of the spring program, right?
Correct.
Ben?
And it's Mother's Day.
Mother's Day.
Oh, and Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there.
You can't say it early. That doesn't count.
Nope. You gotta say it day of.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
they
then
might
everybody
listen
would
to this
just.
tomorrow.
It's Mother's Day somewhere in the world.
That's right. In Japan.
Started.
Did they have Mother's Day in Japan?
It doesn't matter.
Is it just American thing?
Oh, they have mothers
I
in
don't know why I'm
Japan.
looking at you. I know you don't know.
Pete's mom is in Japan, and she's
Yeah, it's just
American,
Pete.
so happy Mother's Day.
I already said it to her. So
You did? Did you
Yeah.
call her?
yesterday.
What'd you
It
call
was
her?
still a day early. So
Mother's Day is celebrated across the world in more than 50 countries, though not all countries celebrate it on the same day. So the ones that do celebrate it the second Sunday of May include Australia, Denmark, Finland, Italy, Switzerland, Turkey, and Belgium.
And this list is by no means exhaustive.
Well.
Probably 50 countries. Who knows? Yeah, that's a great fun.
Mothers are important. Very important.
No.
You know, they still,
can define what a
they
mom
still
is.
celebrate Mother's Day. They still celebrate Mother's Day, but Father's Day is just about non-existent anymore.
It's about cooking out, right?
Let's see if we can.
Mother's Day is still good. But Father's?
Well, they would celebrate
They're not
it, but there's
as important, apparently.
they don't know who. They have nobody to celebrate it with.
Father's Day is observed
Usually.
by 111 plus countries.
Wow.
In America, most of the fathers are not present.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why. Because they're a bunch of losers. But we love fathers here.
Well, what's today's subject again?
Cool.
Not fathers.
Not fathers.
A lot of countries celebrate Father's Day.
So,
Wow.
was somebody saying there's a problem with the schedule?
What's schedule?
Schedule. We got entertainment next week, and then
And then we're gone.
we're back in time for, aren't we?
On
No.
Saturday.
We're
No.
traveling.
Oh, so when are we doing the
Just when we
King
get
James
back.
thing?
The next one.
All right.
Yep.
Is that the way it was originally?
I think originally the last one was supposed to be
Next week.
next week. Why?
But we didn't count it right or something.
Something didn't
It
happen.
was David's fault. I remember.
Well, if you gave me the calendar, that is your fault.
True.
Did we miss one? Did we skip a week? Were
No,
gone
we
for
didn't.
one?
So the camp
Skip it.
now has a new well. No, not a new
No.
well.
No.
New
Clean well.
pump.
Pipes.
Does it have a new pump?
No.
Just a
You don't want to know.
How much is a pump?
$2,000.
What?
pump's fine.
I said
Pump's
that
fine.
too. The pump is
Pump's
fine.
good.
Oh, so I never told him that part of it.
Yeah.
The pump and the well work great. So
But we no
tell him
longer
the
have
whole
any
story,
fixtures. No,
what happened with that? I almost called you a second time.
Oh,
the
yeah,
first
that's
call
funny.
was totally not even
That's
needed, but
Maybe not, but I wanted to make it anyway.
Better
'cause
safe than sorry.
better safe than
it
sorry.
added to my stress level that
You're
day I
welcome.
was standing in the
I'm sorry.
camping world.
Well, I'm glad I didn't have to call you the second time. So what happened was, I had called you at the point where he started pulling up the old pipe, and we found the first section had
Right.
that hole in it.
Right.
Sent you. I didn't even send you that, but
No, you
it-
didn't send me anything.
It's a big honking hole in it, losing a lot of pressure on just that one pipe. Anyway, so he started pulling up the rest of them. He was going to cut them all instead of trying to pry them apart with the two pipe wrenches to save himself time and trouble because he knew he was going to replace it. Hence the call to you, and perhaps saving some. But we had that discussion saying we just send it up. Anyway, so he pulled up the rest of it, pulled up the old pipe, the pump, got all the way to the top, and then put down the new pipe all the way down to the bottom. He proceeded to then turn it on, and it was gasping, gurgling, and wasn't pumping anything. So he pulled it back up, and he thought that it was broken, that it had gotten caught, a bunch of debris caught in it, first of all, and was jamming up the pump, and that it wasn't doing what it was supposed to. And then I had the brain idea of asking him, so the new sections of pipe are 20 feet long. The old sections of pipe were
He didn't prime it.
21, no, not that.
Getting there.
The pump is all the way at the bottom. You don't have to prime it. It's, anyway.
You're along the correct lines, though.
You're along the correct lines. But no, it was, the old sections of pipe were 21 feet long apiece. So he was 7 feet short. Plus, he hadn't lowered it all the way into the hole because
Gotcha.
he had it out the top. It was going to pump out the
So it was
excess.
shortest section of pipe.
It was short by approximately 12 feet where the original pump had been sitting. Or where originally
And
the
you
pump had
figured
been
that out?
sitting. And I was like, because I was asking him a bunch
you
of
know
questions
math.
and trying to figure it out. But he is still of the opinion that it had something to do with the pump itself being clogged, jammed, or whatever. Because he went through a process of cleaning it out, took it apart, and all that stuff. And I
Because
saw him.
technically it was under the water table. Or
It was, yes. So the water table out at the camp from that point, he said, was 134 feet. He was very adamant about it. But the pipe that he had put down there was obviously 140 feet, 20 foot a section, 7 sections. So if it was right there, it's just sitting basically right on top of the surface of the water. And what he said happened was that he turned it on and he got a little bit of water out of it, and then it just stopped pumping. So I had him at another section of the pipe.
Yeah.
Put it in, and it worked
Lowered it
just
down to
fine.
160
The
60 feet.
significance of this, the significance of that is he was starting to suggest that you replace the pump because he said
Yes.
the pump was bad.
The pump was bad.
And you just said how much a pump was, which is why it's such a big deal for you to be like, hey, slap on another piece of pipe, go down further.
Yeah.
And it started working. So,
Okay.
no new,
How much
don't
was the
need
pipe? $20 a shot? 20,
It
40
was
bucks?
80 to 100, somewhere in there. That was his estimate. He didn't know 100%. But it was
Per,
per section, yes. Yes, they are heavy duty pieces.
they made of gold?
Yes. They're really nice. We have a leftover section.
I suggested straws, but
yeah.
Get all the
So
campers out there.
basically,
We're
we'll
going
never
to get a windmill.
We'll never lose pressure again.
never ever.
I think it's supposed to be, there's supposed to be some kind of maintenance done on those wells.
So the
every
pressure
often.
is double of what it was before we got
Oh, it
that
was
fixed.
intense.
It was 35 before you said?
35, now it's holding
Almost.
60 where
Almost
it's supposed
double.
to be.
Turn them.
So what did he do with the chlorinator?
Chlorinator, he said, is pretty much shot. And he said that's probably one of the reasons why it was so badly corroded and
Did he take it off?
Because it's off, yes. It's not back on.
We
there
don't
right now.
need it
Basically,
unless they
well,
tell
to
us.
chlorinate the well.
They're the ones that sold it to us, told me we needed
Yeah.
it.
Probably he had said something as a state regulation or something. But you can also get away, apparently, with just chlorinating it once a year by taking off the top and dumping down the pellets.
lead pipes.
Oh, seriously.
Instead of having it automatically done, you can just do it manually. You just pop off the top. Anyway.
Oh my.
Yes, I know. It was a great to-do and fun thing. But anyway, long story short, I'm glad I didn't have to call you a second time. So, because the dumb thing worked.
How much do you
Right
want
now, it
to,
sits about 2 feet lower than originally it was, so it's good.
since we're having a staff meeting here.
Yeah.
How much do you want to sell that van for? Somebody asked me. I put the
How much are they going to pay?
mower on Marketplace to sell it, and then somebody messaged me and said, "Are you selling that Odyssey in the back?" And I was like, it hasn't run in 5 years, and it needs a new transmission.
$700.
Transmission.
Okay.
They can have it. $700. Is that
They,
too much?
they have to come get it. Like,
No, I'll say 1,000. See what he says.
there you go.
All right. Well, I'll get 7.
Well, you should-
You
Because
get,
it's not
listening to
listed.
They're
You
listening
hear
to
me?
this right
Huh.
now.
I get 7. You get 3.
2,000.
2,000. Yeah.
And the transmission works.
You gonna stand
First
behind
gear,
that?
anyway. Huh?
You can stand behind that?
2,000. No.
Wow.
That's funny.
Anyway, fun week.
JT, your dad is advocating for lead pipes.
Oh, yeah. Drinking water, lead pipes. What could go wrong?
He qualifies for going over and being the leader of free world China.
Scooby Doo on the side. You can No, man.
Name your price.
Hey, there already is a van in town here
There is.
that's painted as like the worst paint
The
job you've ever
mystery
seen, but it
machine.
says on it, the
Mystery
Mystery Machine.
I saw a camper parked at Hobby Lobby, and its door was a regular wood door from Menards. Its outside door was a regular.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, what?
It's probably one of those
Get her done, Betty.
bargain
Gotta get it
prices from
done.
the bank.
Oh, one of them free
Had to make-
doors.
Yeah.
How would that be? How would that be waterproof?
I don't think it is.
It doesn't have to be. They just wanted a door. Get a bed sheet,
Man.
plastic sheet, glue it on.
Seen worse.
What was that? Oh, that car that, I don't know. It looks like it's on a truck chassis, but it's like wood frame build out. Have you guys seen that around? It was like a couple of years since I've seen it, but it was around town. But it was basically a camper section built on the top of this. I don't know. You guys should.
Pete's got this.
Right?
Pete's got this desire for one of those little truck car
Well, I
things from
do,
like
but
Japan
it's probably not
or
gonna
whatever.
happen.
I saw a video of one
They're
of those
cheap.
the other day. They're like the little teeny trucks.
You would
that
be
are like
just as
one-
They are
happy. Sell your
mini trucks.
Honda. You could buy one. Those things are cheap.
seriously.
It's basically
Just get
got like a
one
motorcycle engine in it. Really,
I don't
That's all it's
understand
got.
that. That's all the Honda is.
Yeah.
No, mine's a 4.
What is
Huh?
that? What is that called?
Mine's a 4-cylinder.
The thing will last
The
forever.
mini trucks are all 3-cylinder.
Well, you get done what you need to get done in the Honda.
Oh yeah. I know.
I saw them line up. That was a YouTube video. They had a Honda, Toyota, and something else I don't remember. These old beat up cars, and they're like, it was like, how long will these run without oil? They took all the oil out, and one was like 10 seconds. The other one was like 30 seconds, and it caught on fire. The Honda, they were riding around for like 5 minutes without. It was just riding. They were just riding around just until finally it stopped. Like
Wow. You can get. They actually have U.S. mini truck sales.
I know.
You can get them with a dump bed.
They have a dump bed. They have
off-road,
snowplow
off-road
attachments.
comfort,
They have
all-terrain 4x4.
What are you gonna plow
It's
with
an
that? It's
ATV.
got like two.
That's all it is.
5-speed manual transmission.
Why are you all looking at me? What
Top
you're saying-
speed,
you're trying to
60
sell me on the
kilometers.
idea?
No.
Check these things
Staff
out.
vehicles.
They're like, could you
Just
see
got one.
Pete rolling up to camp? Rolling
I'm
up
going
to
to
camp in one
install
of these.
a battery in it
look at this.
and make it a
You
electric
see Pete
vehicle.
rolling up with one of them.
Oh yeah,
One of them guys.
That's a tricked out one actually. That's
Oh, that's pretty nice. Look at that.
I put a 50 cal.
I bet you could put a mattress.
It's a
in the back.
glorified 4x4.
Those things still can haul about 1,000 pounds.
Well, mine is
1,000 pounds is not a lot of pounds.
It's half a ton. That's half a ton.
Man,
His car can't hold anything besides him and the girls.
wow, that's nice. Ooh, hey, look for the
extended
kids.
Cab.
He
Extended
wants a
this.
picture.
Yeah.
They want. They
For
want
the
to see
kids.
it. What it's like
For the
Oh,
kids,
wow.
it's got a little van.
It's like a
like a-
safari
Wait, let me-
vehicle out.
It's a lot smaller.
in
They need to put a
Africa.
person next to that because it's like Matchbox
can't
size.
zoom in
Like
anymore.
something you would
person
see
is
in
about
the
a head taller.
There we go.
Yeah, it's
Philippines.
teeny. That looks bigger than what it is.
See this cute little.
It's tiny.
It's like a. That's not the one he wants. The one he wants is like. It's like a man's truck. A man's kitty truck. Mini truck.
Those remind me of my bathroom slippers.
A man's truck, little girl size.
Anyway,
So next week, graduation, JT.
That's right. Maybe.
Graduating from
If
college with
Tomorrow goes well.
That's right.
Yeah,
he still has
that's
one
right.
day of the spring
There's
program.
still, it's hanging by a thread.
he's doing a student ministry degree.
Such and such student.
General studies, you know. He crammed 1 year into 4. And he's done a great job. He's graduating with an old-fashioned pastoral theology degree.
That's good.
Tell us what your plan is. Educate us.
My plan?
He's going to go to Disney World.
I'm going to DC in 3 weeks.
No, I meant
Your plan for life.
his plan is he's out of here. That's what he said.
Pete? No.
Well, he doesn't have a plan.
Well, I'm
doesn't have
planning
to
on
have a
going
plan?
in pastoring, if that's what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, share with the world your plan.
But specifically, nothing's nailed down.
You're going to wait for me to die so you can have this church, right?
Is that an option? Oh, well, it is closer than we
Peter's
thought.
taking notes.
Well, it came up like 3 weeks ago, before the incident of last week. So,
When he almost died on the four-wheeler. you mean?
yes.
Yeah.
Hey, but that is another note. When they were servicing the well and doing that, they killed that tree for us. Took it out.
Yeah.
It was great.
They took it out.
Took the rest of it out.
Sir.
Dad took a few branches out.
Tear out this tree. Yeah.
It was already halfway gone and laying on the ground.
Tear down this.
That's what it gets for touching the Lord's
The man of
anointed.
Yeah.
Wow.
It used to be alive.
And then
it shriveled
Pastor
up.
ran into it.
And it shriveled up.
My blood dripped on it.
The date tree. Or
Yeah.
the
Fig.
Yeah,
fig
the
tree.
fig
Yeah,
tree.
the fig tree. Yeah.
I'm healing fast, though. I mean,
Yeah, you
my
look
eyes
good.
getting a lot better.
Great.
You look awesome.
Awesome.
You look awesome.
Don't speak up too loud.
You look great. You look so good.
I wanna throw this pen through the hoop in her earring. Looks great.
That's really annoying.
Eyeball looks awesome.
What, him whispering?
Yes, it's a thing. People enjoy listening to that.
That's
Don't they?
Unless it's Biden.
Oh man, I
likes
saw a
to do
video of
that.
Biden
He
the other
talks
day. It was so
Biden
funny.
was
I don't remember what
scary.
it was, but it was hilarious.
Wow, this
Scary
is
president.
Ransomist.
It was one of those things where he just didn't know what he was saying, but he kept moving his mouth. It's like, what?
That's every time he opens
What
his
are
mouth.
you saying? Stop it.
True international pressure.
It's like somebody put this man on reverse or something.
We should all
because-
talk at the same time like that. Person.
Summed up in one word.
The greatest.
Okay, now that we've had that out of the way.
I love the little videos that they put out of him, his little slurs or whatever he said that doesn't make any sense, and then they go to like a game
Not his
show.
slurs, him slurring his words.
Yeah, slurring his words.
yeah.
It's like a game show, and this guy's sitting there, and he said, "What did President Biden say?" And they have like 4 options. It's like Jeopardy or something or whatever that is. It's like, hey, these.
Oh, man.
I'll take slurred speech for $800.
Oh, boy.
Aaron Rodgers is no longer a Packer.
I'm rooting for the New York Packers.
New York Packers.
Sure, yeah.
I call them the faster Packers.
Oh, no.
The Jets. They're the faster Packers.
Wow.
We'll find out.
Aaron Rodgers was tired of Green Bay not giving him the tools he needs to win a Super Bowl.
You mean more money?
The Jets got him and then went and signed all the Packers players.
Yeah, pretty
So
much.
he could get a Super Bowl. Same players that he had in Green Bay.
That's why I call them the faster Packers.
I hope they fall straight on their face.
They're going to the Super Bowl.
Wow.
And everyone will be like,
Bought their
really, guys?
tickets
How
already.
awesome would it be if the Jets and the Packers went to the Super Bowl?
And the Packers won this year.
And the Packers.
That would be so wrong. If I was Rodgers, I'd just be like,
Sure.
wow.
Good for you. Moved a little too
I'm
soon.
boycotting football this year.
Can I have your subscription sign in?
It's a yearly thing, okay? Pretty sure.
I'm sure you guys already got my passcode and are using it anyway.
I don't love football that much.
Can neither confirm nor deny
What's your passcode
the
again?
login.
Yeah,
Let me check and see if I do have it. What
Will
is
watches the game and then talks the whole time. You know what kind of camera they're using right there? They tell you what the kind of camera they're using.
I
Look
have
at that.
no idea
Look at
what
that
kind of
camera there.
camera
It's got 800 megapixels, or I have no idea. What I'm
Yeah.
saying.
800?
That's a lot.
That's a lot of megapixels.
I'm assuming that's a lot. I just picked a big number.
Yeah, that's a
megapixels
very
at the
big
end,
number.
So sounds techie and cool. Yeah.
Good job, Pete. Thanks.
How many megapixels is our eyes? Our eyes?
The
Try to say
resolution?
that 10 times fast. Our eyes.
Oh, he's googling it. He doesn't know.
I don't know.
This is the longest
Okay, Biden.
randomest first segment.
Our eyes. Our
576.
Wow, our eyes are not
megapixels.
even 800 megapixels. Most cameras today are between, 12 and
12
20.
megapixels. iPhone 7 was a 12 megapixel.
12 and 20.
Resolution of the human eye is 578.
That's God's camera.
Click, click, click.
But it's a self-healing
Man,
camera.
I need a new microchip. To
So if you drop
store
it-
all on. Hard drive is toast.
This is a good comparison here. So, like a TV, a 4K TV is 8.3 megapixels. So, if your eyes are 578,
That's a lot.
That's huge.
Yeah. And our brains have to store that information.
That's why
That's crazy.
Can't remember anything.
Have you guys seen?
No,
these,
you have glasses. You have to store less information.
Have you guys seen these? They're kind of like the VR goggles, but they're called AR glasses. They're getting smaller and smaller now to where you can put them on, and there's a little USB-C cable that
Augmented
goes.
reality?
Well, all it is there's a software program that can make it basically have screens, so you could be sitting at your laptop but have.
I'm
big
for that. I
screens
might
to-
invest in that so I can get you guys out of the office and actually doing some.
We could be shoveling and doing Canaan Media work at the same time.
That's not happening. But yeah,
Hey, Siri. Or wait.
Hey, Siri.
okay.
Type on the keyboard.
It's actually pretty neat because basically all it is instead of one, you have three.
Well, it's just as many. Yeah,
And it's just
I think
like,
you could do up to 4. It's kind of neat.
and they have these. Dad, you'll love this. They literally have virtual coffee shops. These people log in.
Why would I love that?
You don't have to actually be around anybody.
You log in. People
But you
log. They
can't
have
get
to
your
work all
coffee.
day.
If you don't like somebody, you just
You can mute them, block them.
You know, it's like walking around with them. You just like okay,
Disappear.
goodbye. Goodbye.
It's a virtual. Basically, you're sitting there working in a virtual coffee shop, and there's other people working in the same coffee shop. And you can talk to them.
You can hear people's
You
conversations.
can hear.
It's
If you don't like being alone.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
creepy.
it's for people who are working. They don't want to be
not
alone. They
creepy
want
at
to.
all.
it's the metaverse, guys. No, that's not the metaverse.
That's Twilight Zone.
Oh,
It's close.
Well, we are doing a good job at totally wasting time.
Yeah.
Okay,
On the irrelevant.
let's go to a
And
song.
the note to our last segment of the third degree.
Let's go to a song. Patriot of the Lamb, the Prophets. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
And we're back. We have 3 episodes left of Growing Up IFB, and we've been having a good time with our discussions. A little lengthy, each one of them. Probably all of them lasted 3 hours each. I'm not sure how long this one will last, but I wanted to talk about the subject of the one. In other words, when our children end up choosing their mates and who they choose and how God was a part of that. I thought probably the best way to do that is my wife and I are going to share how we met and how God brought us together and some of the things that were in our life during that time that were not pleasant to actually get to the altar, and how we knew God's will was being worked. I said earlier off air, I said I wasn't very spiritual, so I just knew I loved her and she was pretty. Jill's the one that has to explain how it was God's will. Jill told me it's God's will. Trust me, it's God's will. And so, well, I had just gotten out of prison, and Mansfield State Penitentiary, had served 4 years of a 3 to 15 year sentence, and got paroled to Youngstown, Ohio, and was in a halfway house for 6 months before I could go get a job. And then when I was allowed to get a job, I looked for about a month, maybe a little over a month, for a job. And I kept telling myself the last place that I would get a job is McDonald's. And guess what? That was the last place I got a job. And they came to me and they said, we don't think that you're looking for a job, so you got to have something within the week. And so I walked into McDonald's on Mahoning Avenue, sat down to put the application in, and before I even had it halfway filled out, the manager had hired me, and I started my career at McDonald's at that point. I worked at that McDonald's, got into management after 3 weeks, became a swing supervisor, and then was demoted on a Saturday. I went in to work. I was still in the halfway house, but I went in every time I could to get out of the halfway house. And I was in on a Saturday morning waiting for my shift to start, and they were backed up, and everybody all the back line guys had hangovers from the night before, so nothing was going right. So I got in the back and started helping, and I wasn't clocked in, but was trying to help out. And then all of a sudden, the owner of the store, Mr. Cavelli, came walking in of all the stores. I think he owned like 20 stores or something like that. And he came in, and the place was going crazy, or customers upset. They weren't getting their orders. And he went to the back and asked who was in charge. And I said I was. And I got demoted the next day. So I wrote a letter trying to explain exactly what was going on. And they agreed to reinstate my management if I would go to a store across town, which was the highest volume store in Youngstown area, Belmont Avenue, and so I get transferred over there. And then after about a month working there, I put in for a transfer to evenings because I didn't want to be in the halfway house in the evening time. So they granted my transfer, and I was waiting to transfer, and then they said, "Oh, you're going to be working with those Christian girls." Well, I had been saved when I was 15, and so I was Christian, but I was kind of curious, and I said, "What do you mean, Christian girls?" "Well, they don't wear pants." And I said, "Are they Amish?" Because I had never heard that before. And they said, "No, they're Baptists." I said, "Oh, that's crazy. I know a bunch of Baptist women. They all wear pants." And they said, "Well, these ones don't." And so I took the shift in the evening, and that's where I met Jill. And she was working the drive-through. That was her area. And her sister was actually working too. I think just two of them at that time. And she attempted to witness to me, and we took a break together, and I was already saved. So through a series of events, she found out I was saved and began to pray for me. She went off and began to teach in Michigan and kept praying for me. And I got out of prison, out of the halfway house, and August 1st of 1988. Did not go to church till August 14th, 1988, but I haven't missed since. But so I started going to church and found out I needed to be baptized. So my father-in-law baptized me, and Jill, of course, was being kept apprised of all of that, and she was praying for me, and I was trying to decide which one of the Brennan girls I liked, Kathy, Debbie, or Jill, and the other two didn't want me, so I got Jill.
Wow.
Just kidding. Just kidding. So I just had a conversation with her. One day she called and was congratulating me on being baptized, and it was one of those things where I felt like Jill was interested in me, but I didn't know, and I didn't really understand the Christian dating world at all. So I thought every one of the Brennan sisters liked me because they were just being kind, and the love of Christ sometimes is confusing when you're brand new and you're trying to figure those things out. But Jill was genuinely interested, and so we made a time to call, and we ended up spending a lot of time on the phone and fell in love actually on the phone. Is that right, Jill?
Pretty much.
I went to her dad and said, "I'd like to ask your daughter to marry me." He said, "Well, I've never known Jill not to do something that the Holy Spirit didn't give her permission to do."
Is that a yes?
I just sat there and was like, okay. And basically he was saying, ask her. If she says yes, then okay. If she says no, then he knows that God doesn't want that to happen. So I asked her, and she said yes after she got over the shock of the size of the ring that I showed her. And but I just knew, I guess it was a weird time for me because I was growing in the Lord. I was going to church, and I was reading my Bible, and things were coming alive spiritually. And at the same time, God was working on my heart to be in the ministry, which took a lot of work because I had a lot of other plans, and then, of course, being arrested in jail. I think her mom and dad and her family had a big part in helping me to kind of get rooted in the truth and headed the right direction, because I spent a lot of time at their house. And but we got engaged, and we're supposed to get married in September. And but I had made a commitment to my father-in-law, who was my pastor. He asked me to promise him that I would not marry Jill unless I was debt-free. And so I had $700 debt, was all the debt that I had. And he came to me, he says, "Do you think you're going to be debt-free by the wedding?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure, but I only owe $700." He goes, "Well, you promised me that you would be debt-free." And I said, we had a long conversation. And in the end, I said, okay. And so we postponed the wedding to February. And I honored my father-in-law, and we got married, and the rest is history. I'll let her tell what she wants to tell.
Well, from my perspective, which of course the show is growing up IFB. So of course I grew up in a Christian home. As a teenager, I had made myself a list of, someone had taught us at some point. I think maybe my mom, put down some things of what you want in someone you're going to marry. Not just want, but, the whole idea is when you're not trying to excuse away, just because you like somebody. But being able to look at it with a cool head and say, what does the Lord want in somebody that you marry? And I think I refined it a little bit going through college. But to me, I think I can't exactly remember everything that was on the list. I can probably name most of them. But I think the most important quality for me was someone who wanted to serve the Lord with their whole life. Like, I have mentioned before that I had read, missionary biographies, Hudson Taylor, George Mueller, and these people who, wow, I don't even know why I'm getting emotional. These people who had given their lives to the Lord to be used, whether it was to their benefit or not. And I greatly admired that. And I wanted to marry someone that would have that same desire. And we could be partners together serving God with our life.
Yeah.
And went through college, all 4 years, Bible college, big Bible college, 2,000 students.
Howell Anderson College.
And when I went to graduate, I thought, if I can't find them here, I'm never going to find them. And it was kind of scary and discouraging at the same time. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I had gone to see Brother Hiles, and he said he said he didn't know me personally, obviously. So he said, I counsel all the single girls the same way. I encourage them, if they want to get married, to stay here, because the likelihood of you meeting someone here would make more sense. So stay here and get your master's. But he said he wasn't telling me that I should. He was just saying that he says the same thing to everybody. And I had a couple offers of places to go teach. And the one I showed him, he said, but I wouldn't have a problem with you doing that. He said, it's not a bad choice. So basically I walked out of the office kind of frustrated, because I thought he was going to tell me what to do, but really he didn't really tell me what to do, which of course is the way it's supposed to be. He counseled me, and I needed to know what was God's will. So I decided I was going to go teach. I had someone help him pay my school bill. So to me, I felt like it wasn't very ethical for me to stay for my master's. That'd be like asking these people to keep paying for something that I didn't need. I was graduating and I could go work. So I accepted the position, went to teach, and the church wasn't a whole lot bigger than my home church. I mean, it probably ran around 125, 150. And I remember when I went to visit there, looking around, and nope, no guys there either. But I said, Lord, you know where I'm at. I'm going to serve you, and, whatever you have for me is fine.
You need to tell about how you prayed. You said, about seeing people grow, seeing you win some of the Lord? And
Yeah, he's talking about when I was in college. Of course, I was on the bus route, and it kind of got frustrating during my college years because I would 9 months out of the year be, in Indiana, reaching people. Then I'd go home for the summer. I remember this one family I had reached. I led the lady to the Lord, and then she came to church, and then her husband got saved. The kids, they all came on the bus. They started coming every Sunday. It doesn't happen very often, I mean, it was like so exciting. And of course, they were on a bus riding an hour to church. And when I came back in the fall, they had decided to go to a church near, in Chicago, near them. And of course, they were so excited. They were telling me all about their Pentecostal church that they were going to, and I was so discouraged. I mean, I was happy they were still in church, and I knew they were saved, but, you knew their doctrine was getting all messed up. And I just remember being kind of burdened about that I would go home in the summer, work on some people, and then leave. And I just said, Lord, I would really love it if I could be instrumental in helping somebody grow in the Lord and get to keep watching them grow in the Lord and not have to keep moving and not be a part of their life. And so fast forward to the summer after I graduate, I'm working my summer job, which I had for 3 years, which was at McDonald's. And I'm working nights, and one of the new, managers comes in, and it was interesting because the very first time I met him, he came up to me and he said something to the fact that I went through a really tough time in my life, and I read through my Bible, and I want to talk to you about it sometime. And I can just remember thinking, you're working in the world at McDonald's, and just like,
what a pickup line.
Yeah, I was like,
say, how long did it take you to come up with that one, Dad?
That is exactly what I thought. I was like, wow, that's a new one.
Hey,
no one's tried that one on me.
You want to do a Bible study?
I'm going to do a Bible study with you.
I believe in discipleship.
I
think I laughed because I didn't really think he was serious. But then we did end up obviously talking and getting to know each other. And I just remember thinking as we were working together, because of course he's the same go-getter now that he was then. And it was like, okay, let's see if we can have the person's order to the window from the time they order and the time they drive around, that we open the door and we hand them their food just to see their look on their face. Like,
That's when there's only 3 of us working.
Right. I mean, we would just try to be this like perfectly well-oiled machine. And I could just remember thinking, now, how come I couldn't have met a guy like that when I was in Bible college? Like, I mean, with that drive and that,
Had a nice
initiative. And no, I wasn't
nice
thinking
moment.
about that. You also had a lovely music choice.
Yeah.
Not
I was saved, but I was.
That was about it.
Nowhere near sanctified. That's
right. So, but then, I was only there about a month and a half, and I left. And but I remember putting him right at the top of my prayer list. And he had said he would come to church, when he was able to. But you hear that, so I didn't really,
Tell about how when I told
hope.
you I was in prison, you didn't believe me.
Yes, he had told me he couldn't come. When I invited him to church, he said he couldn't come, and I said, "Well, if you wanted to, you could come." And he said, "No, I really can't." And then somebody told me, my sister told me, he was in prison. And I was like, no, he's not. He's just like, I thought again that he was just trying to, mess with her because she was really gullible and believe everything anybody would say. It's kind of one of the jokes that we had about her. So, and then I said, And so I asked him, and he said, yeah. And I told my sister, I said, he said, yeah, but he was smiling, so I think he's lying. And she goes, he's probably embarrassed. One of the only times in my life that she was actually right and I was wrong.
Wow. It was my fault.
As far as not being gullible about somebody teasing you is what I mean. So, yeah, she had read that one right. But, it's just amazing. And when he came to church, of course, I heard about it from my family, and I was so excited. And then when he got baptized, I actually sent him a card in the mail telling him I was, congratulations for getting baptized.
There was no money in it.
And then you called me the first time. I didn't call him. Just have to
What?
put that in there.
What's that?
You called me.
No. So you called the house.
Oh, and then
I
we
was
talked
over
on
there.
the phone. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and they said,
Well,
"Hey,
you said I
Jill's on the
called
phone." I
you.
said, "Hey, let me talk to her,"
Yeah.
because she had just gotten the card, and I wanted to thank you for the card.
Right.
And then I was like, "Okay, she seems like she likes me." So I called her.
Took 'em a while.
We set it up. I called her. We were talking, and we talked for I don't know how long. And finally, towards the end of the conversation, I said, "Can I ask you a question?" She said, "Sure." What? I said, "Do you like me?" And boy, she was so smooth.
Nothing
She
like
goes,
awkward.
She goes, "Well, what do you think?"
Because I was like, I want to know why he was asking that. You know?
So that was the first time I was ever in a relationship where I put God first. And I told her, I said, why don't we pray before you get off? We'll pray and just see what God's.
Where God takes us.
Yeah.
Yep. And that really impressed me. That him being a new Christian, relatively, new in church, that he would just immediately take the spiritual leadership and say, let's pray. And he didn't say, let's just pray about it and then get off the phone. We actually, right then, prayed about it, and I thought that was the neatest thing. Now, I obviously knew he was brand new, and I knew I had to talk to my parents first, and I really thought that they would probably be like, well, just wait a while, let's see how it goes, which I wasn't horribly worried about it because I was in Michigan and he was in Ohio for the foreseeable. This was in September, so that would be for the next 9 months.
Yeah, he was still in parole, so he ain't going to work.
I don't think I probably understood that, but I asked my parents, and they said that would be fine. Of course, again, I think they did know we were separated by distance. And I remember I even asked my parents, I said, well, I don't understand. There was a guy in our church that we wanted to go out and go do something, and I didn't even like him. I mean, it wasn't like I didn't like him, but, there was nothing there. And my parents said no. And I couldn't understand why not. He came to church. He wasn't doing anything, quote unquote, wrong. He was a Christian. And so I asked my parents that, well, why would you say, yes, I could date Bill, but I couldn't date this other guy? And my mom said, well, Bill loves the Lord with his whole heart, and he's going to serve him. So even then they knew, they could see what he was. And also the fact that they knew that's what I wanted, was to serve the Lord. And, I think there's a certain amount of time. The only thing I could say is when I got done with college, I had opportunities here and there to date different people, and I could have gone the wrong direction. But I'm very thankful that I waited for God's, And so here back in my home church, less than 100 people. I'd gone to a college with 2,000 students, didn't find my husband, but God knew exactly where I was at. So.
All right, Pete, tell us your story.
Oh, I'm next? Jewel is
Oh,
next.
I would go to Jewel, but I don't want people to think that she's the leader of the.
Of the pack? She was. Didn't you know how this worked?
Yeah, I don't think
She saw me and was like, no, let me get behind this book table.
I don't know. I think I was the one talking to you first. I was like,
No, so when was this? I'm just telling the story of how we met. Yeah, this should be fun.
well, you went through Bible college.
you should give backstory.
Well, back in 1987, May 12th, I was born.
Wow.
Four-hour program here tonight, folks.
Yeah, we're starting all the way at the beginning. In the beginning. Okay, so as far as finding the one, I went to Bible college, and of course that's the biggest thing that everybody's there to get, is to get that spouse that God has for him so you can go do great things for God. And actually I met someone there in my junior year. I should say we got to know them better during the junior year. I actually met him in sophomore year. And went through a lot of the steps, actually got engaged in college. But graduated, and through a bunch of different steps, it was broken off. The Lord was in that. Praise the Lord. But I had gone back to Maryland, where my home church was, and was there basically working a secular job and just helping out with ministries in the church and being a part of what I could. and of course, desperately single at that point. So there's still a lot of single people in the church, but none of the ladies that were there, I mean, either I wasn't interested or they weren't interested or all that kind of stuff. Don't even think I ever even like seriously was talking to anybody. Now, of course, my pastor tried to set me up so many times, and other pastors that were visiting said, "Hey, I know someone that you should meet." I'm like, "Yay!" But that never worked out either. So, but lo and behold, one actually I have to credit the bad political structure of our country to meeting Jewel. So it was during Capital Connection that I think Pastor had come out for the second one that we had.
I went to everyone. I went to the first one.
Okay, so but the second one you brought.
Second one I brought the
kids. Okay, but I didn't meet you the first year you came out. No. So, so the second year of Capital Connection, this is back in 2014, I think it was. Pastor brought his family out. They drove out. They were going to do video.
We were helping with the tours.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
the tours.
we
Yeah,
did
that's
do
why
the
we were there
video.
early.
That was in the summertime.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and then so he had brought his whole family. So Sunday school, the Sunday prior to the conference, they had gotten there and were part of the services. You guys, I think, sang that morning or sang Sunday night.
Yeah.
One of the two did something. I met you guys in Sunday school after the morning service in a meeting, and I think I was sitting next to Will and David. They had come in, didn't know them. They were there they said that they were there helping with the conference. It was like, oh, hi, so hung out. And then lo and behold, the sisters walked in and
Peter was like, hello.
hello. Yeah.
Flipped his hair back.
The one has walked through the door. But I didn't know it at that point. Anyway, they were involved with that week of, it's Monday through Wednesday. They came to a lot of things, and I found excuses to be around them.
It was very awkward.
Still
Anyway.
finding excuses.
Yeah. Still there. Need excuses.
I'm trying to find it.
He's stuck now.
Get out while you can. Run.
Blink.
Blink
too late.
twice, Kaylee.
Anyway, at the end of the conference, I basically went up to Pastor and asked, "Hey, I am interested in your daughter." And
Hope?
Yeah, that's what
what
he
I
asked
said.
first. Hope? And it's like, no, Jewel. And I wanted to, I forget, did I ask to call or write? I don't even remember exactly what I asked. But it ended up basically that you said you would talk to Jewel and get back with me. So I left you my information.
I also had to talk to your pastor.
Yeah, and that too. So I ran off.
You're like,
It was midnight. What else were we supposed to do in Capital Tundra? We were getting back on the buses to get.
It wasn't a no, though.
No, it wasn't a no. But you wanted to get with Jewel and find out. And basically the next day I got a call back from you and said that basically we could start writing each other. And that's how it was. And then I had talked to my pastor and Brother Harding, and they were like, "You're talking to Hope?" I was like, "No." They wanted to be Hope.
They wanted Hope.
Yeah.
they would hope to move there.
Yes. It was
There are multiple
Secretary.
attempts to have Hope move there.
That was the first of many.
Yes.
So, but we wrote for a couple of months. Then Pastor invited me to come out and kind of just see the place and the camp mainly. So I came out for a week, and through that process, got to know her a little bit better, got to know the church a little bit better. And, after that week, wow. Sorry, text messages from my family. They're not listening. Otherwise, they wouldn't be texting me right now. What happened next? Was it? Did you offer me a
left.
position? I
No,
left, and then you called me.
You left, and then I called you, and
and offered me a position.
Yeah.
So I came out here then about 2 months after that, in the middle of July, and basically we've been working on staff. We officially started dating shortly after I got here, and then we dated for a year. Dated for 8 months, got engaged in March, married in September of the following, so 2015. So the whole process
fast.
took about 16 months, whatever it was. It was pretty quick. Praise God. And one of the main reasons
It's
for
funny
that
to
is
hear somebody say that's quick, but at your age,
at my age, it
wasn't.
I was 27 when I first met you guys, 28 when I got married.
Mm-hmm.
And Jewel was still a spring chicken.
Well, I'm just saying, quick for her age, probably forever. he's like, you've already been waiting. How old were you? 26?
27.
27.
When I met you guys, yeah.
So, yeah. I'm just saying, time-wise.
Anyway,
So,
that-
Joel, how do you remember it?
He was stalking us. I honestly don't remember like having any attachment like when we first got there.
You mean attraction?
Attraction or anything when we first got there. We just like he was sitting with the guys. So it's like whatever. It wasn't until we went to the rotunda. It was late that night and I noticed him following us and I'm like, why is this guy?
There's something about a creeper that you just were like.
And he had his black trench coat. He had a black trench coat over his arm. And Peter, he's like following us in the background, creeping.
That is not a trench coat.
It looked like a trench
The
coat.
story is sounding really weird, Joel. You want to?
It was weird.
Yeah, sunglasses on.
Umbrella in this story too.
And he was holding
I
a
don't
camera.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh no, those are some horrible
there was
shots.
there was no camera.
Don't even start.
We ended up going into the House of Representatives, and I remember he ended up coming. Somehow, it ended up that Will needed me to come back and sit with him where we were positioned. And when I came back and sat, Will, instead of asking Pete to move over, he just moved to the opposite side.
Don't blame this on me.
I am.
Just hit me like,
but-
it's your fault. I married Peter.
No, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I'm just telling the little things that just
That
were
God
like,
does.
Sure.
Yeah. So he had moved to the opposite side, and of course I went and sat down, and I'm like, oh man, if Dad turns around, I'm gonna get so much trouble for sitting next to a guy. So stupid, the things you think. Of course, in the back of my head, I was like, he is interested, but I'm not gonna like give him anything, like not, you know.
Let him know
Hello, how are you?
that I am
Exactly.
interested too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we left the rotunda, and the boys and I were walking out and had noticed that Dad went missing. And I looked at the boys and I was like, I think he's going to ask to write me or something. And the boys were like, yeah, right, whatever. They were like messing with me because I
thought he was
like
going
talking
to
out the
ask
side of my
about
head.
hope. So
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, actually
Exactly.
earlier I had asked David, the youngest of the family, since he's
Yeah.
the easiest target,
cornered me.
cornered him and asked him if his sister. Did I say sisters? Or
You said
sisters?
sisters.
Both, if
Yeah.
either of the sisters were dating or in
Yeah.
a relation, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he
And
thought
he
I was
said-
talking about hope.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
anyway.
that's probably why he laughed then. And then the next day, Dad pulled me off the side and was like, hey, so this is what's going on. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, he was brave enough to come to Dad face to face. So
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that would impress me. And so
He didn't
anybody's
wait.
man enough to
he didn't wait
come
until
right
you
to
left.
Dad.
Yeah.
And everybody else was chicken.
Call you on the phone.
Chicken livers.
Yes. So to me, that was the first thing that stood out was he was willing to, even though it was super late, even though we were all headed out, stop you and talk to you. And then it's funny that Mom said she had a list. You can definitely tell him her daughter. I also had a list. And
At the top
you
was
that.
my picture.
it was I had it way before I met you. But the cool thing about it was before we got married, every single thing on that list was checkmarked. And it wasn't, I think maybe there were 2 or 3 things on there that were selfish, such as has nice hair and so on and so forth. But I remember at the top of the list, one of my most important things was that they got along with my family. My parents were the biggest thing. And I felt that obviously you would tell me if you didn't think it was a good idea. And then he came out in May. That was actually graduation when he first came out. And he got along really well. And one of my desires at that point was to help at the camp. And he was like helping with building the deck. That was one of his little projects that he did when he first came out. So it just, all of the things kind of just popped into place.
That monument is gone.
Hallelujah.
It's gone.
Praise the Lord. Oh, sorry, that's a total side note.
Yes. Anyways, that's what I remember.
Good.
Okay.
How'd
Then
you
you got
get?
married.
Yeah.
What? How do we
Said
get
I do.
We don't have to know.
Oh, how did we
got
get
married.
engaged?
Yeah.
We ended up going back to Capital Connection the next year. And he proposed to me under the rotunda where he had asked. I'm pretty sure that's where he asked Dad if he could write me. So 1 year later, we're engaged.
Was he creeping with the trench coat?
No, he wasn't that point.
I thought I was wearing it that night. Wasn't I?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. I thought I had it. Oh, well.
It was beautiful.
You
We
had
have
a
it on
pink
video. I think I saw that this week.
3 hits.
Just clean it off your computer.
Did you?
Yeah.
Cleaned it off. Praise God.
No, I didn't delete it. It's still there. It's just
Upload to YouTube.
So we're actually doing these in order. Joel and Pete got married first in the family, so Will got married second. So take it away, Willie.
I went back to school at 25, I think it was. Living that single life, right? No, but I had dated a couple of different times, and it's one of those things when you're growing up in a smaller church, you're like, these people are my friends, so you just don't look at them the same. Almost like you were talking about, back at, Independent. And so I can remember we'd go to youth conferences, and it was like, we got to find somebody. We got to find somebody.
This is when he was 14.
Yeah, exactly. I eventually learned my lesson.
He was doing that in the nursery at First Baptist Church in Hammond, 2 years old.
Gotta find somebody. Anyway, but I had dated a couple of different times, and praise the Lord, didn't work out. Learned lessons, and then the decision was made under counsel to go back to school, try and learn something. And I remember, and obviously, main objective being to get married. I said when I went to Commonwealth, I'm here to get my master's and my missus. So, and the Lord was good to me. The one thing I do know about approaching that situation is, it was one of the first times that I ever remember thinking about the fact that, I would like to get married, but at this point, it's like whatever God wants. Because I remember all the times in the past where it's like, I got to do everything I can to make that person, not to manipulate, to be the best that you can, to be as impressive as possible, so that they will want to be with you. Because I thought that's what you need to do, and then be the guy who's the go-getter, go after her. When I was like, went to college, I'm like, you know what? I ain't chasing nobody. It's not like when you're 16 going to youth conference and you act like a desperate moron, just like hanging around all the popular kids.
Dropping pencils.
Yeah, they'll go, oh yeah, that's Eric Rinker. That's funny. I'll go over here. There's this girl that I had wanted to talk to, and he's like, tell you what, I will take this pen, and I will go over here, and I'll drop it, and I'll be like, buddy, come pick up this pen. He's like, and then you can come talk to her. Like,
That's the dumbest
thing I've ever heard.
Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. No. So, but when I went to Commonwealth, I think the very first chapel service of class, or very first chapel service where all the students were together, because I was there about a month early, but at the first chapel, I sat behind Kaylee. And I just remember, was like, ooh, she cute. But I asked the guy that was sitting next to her, I was like, hey, who's that? And he's like, he didn't even tell me her name. He's just like, oh, she's dating. I was like, oh, okay. And I just forgot about it and I had told myself when I came into it, I was like, I'm not going to be that guy who's like chasing everybody and trying to if it's going to work out, it's going to work out. And obviously it did. So that's my story. I'm just kidding.
Long story short.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's details that I'm probably missing if you want to jump in and fill any of
Didn't
those
Dad
in.
call you and ask you like the first?
Oh,
week?
all the time. Yeah.
Oh, we
My
kept
family
bugging him.
called
Have
me
you found
all
her
the
yet?
time.
Have you found her yet?
Yeah. Is anybody interest you there yet?
And then finally he started telling us, well, I have my eye on somebody. We're like, what's her name? I don't know.
I don't know what. Yeah, I didn't know what her name.
He kept saying that for like a month. I don't know. I'm like, can't you just ask somebody what her name is?
The thing is, when you're in a college like that and you say, hey,
What's her
name? Everybody's like,
That's bad. Yeah.
and it travels like wildfire. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to let anybody think that I'm like, hey, go figure it out for me. So
that time was not easy for me because I felt like you were just keeping information. Like, being secretive. I'm like, okay, what in the world's going on? How can you not know the girl's name that you're interested in? What kind of moron doesn't find out the girl's name?
Well, and we just grew. I mean, it was just a different world that we were in.
No, it was just a scary time because you pray for your kids.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you don't want them to choose the wrong mate. Right. And so, I knew he was there, and I knew, really, he didn't need a degree. I didn't feel he did. Maybe he thought he did, but I didn't think he did. So I knew he was there shopping. And so he would talk to me, but they're just little things that were left out that made me go, okay, I don't know what's going on here. But I had to step back, really, and just give him space to spread his wing and do his thing.
Your friend came back to you.
Oh yeah, it was around May, I think. I started class in the spring semester, so I was there for 3 months.
It was about March.
Yeah, about March when he came over to me. But he was right before chapel. I'm heading to the chapel, and he comes out the chapel doors, and he's like booking it over to me. He's like, hey, you know that girl you asked me about? She ain't dating no more. I'm like, well, first of all, I don't know her name, but I did look at him. I was like, okay, all right. It's kind of weird thing to be like attacking me about. He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. What do you want me to do? Go over and ask her to marry me right now? So it didn't happen.
She would have said yes.
Yeah. So
she already liked you.
Yeah, and you find out all those stories after the fact. So you can jump in and because there's stuff happening in the background that I didn't know about. But I didn't want to know about.
She asked to sit in front of him during chapel the
Yeah.
first time.
I guess there was talk before I ever got there about who I was going to get set up with because I was an older student, 25, coming in.
And they know you're looking for Mrs.
Yeah. Oh, who at 25 goes back to college? I mean, really? We're not stupid. So they were trying to set me up with a couple of different folks, but I can remember finding those things out after we started talking.
Anyways, you were doing, I don't know if was it an internship with one of
It's the practicum, the ministry stuff, yeah.
With one of the instructors at the college, and he so happened to be my bus captain. And so Will was able to be a part of a lot of the big days we had on the bus, and when we had bus meetings, Will would come to them. So through that, we got to know each other. And I mean, it's May at this point, and you're like, summer is about to start, you're about to go home. I don't know if this is going to work out, but I think it's at the beginning of May. You had asked permission to call my dad or get my dad's number or something. So you called my dad, and he gave permission for us to talk, and then we went home. And then that summer, I had actually gone to Romania for 2 months. So most of our talking was over the phone. And as soon as I got back from Romania, Will had come to visit my parents for the first time, and I was so nervous for him to meet my parents. And of course, most of our talking happened over the phone. It wasn't face-to-face. We probably had 2 or 3 weeks of where we talked at the college. And at that point, Will had asked my dad if he could ask me to be his girlfriend. I remember it was in the evening, and if you know my parents, the story's going to be funny. He had asked my dad to talk to him and asked my dad's permission, can I ask Kaylee to be my girlfriend? And
this was like semi in private. We were standing out in front of the house.
Well, my mom and I
Kay
were
and her mom were
inside.
inside.
And my dad walks in the front door. He says, Tony, Will wants to ask Kaylee to be his girlfriend. What do you think
Kay's
about
right
that?
there. Kay's right there. I'm like, okay.
Surprise, surprise.
So basically, my dad asked me to be his girlfriend.
Yeah. What do you think of that? Well, if anybody thinks otherwise, no one's going to say it. No one's going to be like,
Anyways,
no.
Will came to Bible college in January, and I was actually finishing college a semester early. So we both were going to be finishing in December. We both went back that semester, ended up getting engaged in September, and married in December. It's very fast, but the Lord, his hand was very evident through that. And I think a lot of that was being willing to get counsel with my parents and also my pastor at the college I was at. And like that Bible verse says, in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. And going through a breakup and then finishing college in a semester, you don't quite know what you're going to do. But I think I just felt secure in that, and going to my counselors and asking for advice and being willing to be truthful about who I was dating and not shading anything. So, anything else?
Oh, there was a lot of little details, but they're all the juicy stuff. It's just whatever.
It's radio. That's what they're here for.
How long was it before you guys, when you met to when you got married?
We started
technically talking in May, so really dating in May, I guess.
But you had your
then
eyes
got-
on each other since.
Well, so and
March.
that's actually the interesting thing. So she mentioned that I helped out with the bus ministry. I did. It was almost a month after a couple of months after I had started doing bus ministry stuff before we ever talked. So, and it was almost a month after that gentleman had come up to me and said that she wasn't dating anymore the week before we talked. But there were other folks who were involved and folks that I was friends with that helped kind of set things up, and they invited me to play. They like to do skip bow and games like that in the evenings because they had their free time. So they would invite me to come back to the college in the evening and do that. And she just so happened to show up. I don't know how that happened. She was there too. So, but you need to tell him, like, you remember what you said? You need to say what you told me about. Remember, you went in. When did you say that? Was it after you broke up?
Mm-hmm.
Tell everybody what you said, because that cracks me up still.
Well, he was obviously older student coming into the college, and more mature than the average Bible college student. And I just sat there in the pew, and I was like, whoever gets that guy is going to be blessed. And then lo and behold,
You're blessed.
so
She began the formulated plan.
yes.
I think it was after one of the first times that we talked, and we're not stupid. I mean, she's about to finish college, and I'm not dumb to know that I'm not like, hey, what's your favorite color? You know, it's not like. She told me that she went back to her dorm after the first time that we talked together, and she told her best friend. She said, "I'm gonna marry that man." That story cracks me up.
Wow.
So I went home and was like, well, I hope this works. Oh, man. I snookered her into it.
And that takes us to David, the baby of the family.
So, Bud had gone to college, Commonwealth, to get his master's degree, or Mrs., I guess, and was successful. So I figured anything my brother can do, I can do better, surely. No, so I graduated with my bachelor's degree here at Great Plains and served on staff for, I think, 2 years. And then sort of looking around and, I wanted to get married. And so after some praying and felt the time was right that maybe I should go get my master's degree. So prayed about the place to go and really had no idea. Honestly, didn't necessarily care that much. I just figured wherever it is, I'm sure God will work it out. And it was a little bit hard. I was just, see, you went when you were 25. I went when I was 23. So for me, it was a little bit harder because I hated that feeling of people like, oh, you're just here to find a wife, But I didn't like
it.
you embraced
With
it.
open
I didn't
arms.
like it. Yeah, because I also knew the possibility of not finding somebody. It's like it's not like we haven't traveled a lot or been around or seen. So anyway, I pretty much knew probably the first or second day that I was at college that I honestly didn't think I was going to find anyone because I didn't realize this, but COVID had pretty much knocked out all of their junior and seniors. So I was 23, 24 years old, and pretty much all of their girls were 18 and 19 years old, which I guess for Peter would be okay.
Worked for me. It's the perfect amount of.
But Jewel, how old was Jewel
I was 19 when we met.
when you met? So,
And then I
7
turned
years.
Yeah.
7 years.
but
3
we'll give
months.
Jewel some credit being a little bit more mature than the average girl that I saw there. So, but I was there for the first semester. Nothing happened. I was there for the second semester. I don't remember how long it was into the second semester, but I got a notification on my phone, and I looked down, and it was some girl who wanted to follow me on Instagram. And I did what every honest, independent fundamental Baptist single guy does. I looked at her profile picture and I said, she's kind of cute. I think I'll accept that. And I'm just being honest here. But anyway, and of course, I think her account was private. I think your account was private at the time. I don't know if it still is. I don't remember. But anyway, so you had to like request to see her page and stuff. So I followed her, and that's pretty much all I remember thinking, really. And then it was, I don't know if it was a week or so had gone by, and I had put out a bus video at the beginning of February on my social media on Instagram promoting the bus conference that was coming up. And it was just a recording of me saying, "Come out to the bus conference." I don't remember what I said.
Come out to the bus conference.
I'll be there. I'm single. Yeah. Anyway, she had commented on the video and had just said something along the lines of like, praying for you guys' bus conference, love the bus ministry, something like that. And so she opened the door there, so I went ahead and stepped on through. And so I asked her a couple questions. I didn't know really anything about her, but she said that she loved the bus ministry, so I asked if she was involved in the bus ministry. We had a short conversation. And then that was right before I came home for the bus conference. And so I drove home to the bus conference. And of course I'd been looking at her profile, and we had talked a little bit. And so I knew a little bit about her. And so I was like, well, I'm going to talk to my parents, because this was not the first time that a girl ever messaged me on social media. And it was a little bit different, because usually you could tell that they're just wanting to flirt. It's almost like a teenage, like, oh, how are you? Or, things like that, where they just want to start talking. And I always close the door on that type of stuff. But I had learned that she was already graduated. She was 24. She was my age. And so she wasn't, a teenager. She wasn't immature. But anyway, so I talked to both you, Dad and Mom, while I was here. And they basically said, well,
if you met her on Instagram, it's a no.
Yeah. And so they said, well, you got to talk to her, And so, because honestly, although I could see her profile, I honestly didn't know much about her. So I made sure that I think I asked you if your parents knew. And on the way back from the bus conference, we talked on the phone for the first time. And I don't know how long we talked, but I was driving all night. So I think we talked a couple hours. And then from there, we just kept talking back and forth, and I went during my spring break to visit her in March. So it was only 2 weeks later, I think, 3 weeks later, and we spent a weekend. Was it a weekend together? Visited her family, got to meet them, her church, went on an official date, and we continued to talk. And then I think you came out and visited me in Kentucky in April.
Yes.
In April, and that's when you guys, you met Will and Kay. You guys came out to chaperone, because I couldn't find a chaperone, and Dad was good enough to send you guys out here. But so that's when we became boyfriend and girlfriend officially. And then fast forward, and we got married. But I think we got engaged. So it was really quick. It was funny. It was quick. Yours was quick. Ours was even faster, because I think it was a total of 5 months from when we started talking to when we got engaged. 9 months until we got married. So, but we were, there are some things that I never, you're of the same opinion. It's not like I get up and I promote, meeting your wife on social media and farmersonly.com. But I think following the same principles that anybody should follow when they're seeking a relationship, and that's talk to your parents first. Don't hide anything. Be transparent about it.
You met with her pastor.
And I called Brother Kavanaugh, talked to him for about half an hour. Of course, talked to my parents. She talked to her parents. I don't know if you talked to Brother Kavanaugh before you started talking to me or not. But so I always say that I actually had a young guy call me while I was dating her. It was in the summertime, and he knew that we had met on social media, and he was a lot younger, 19, 20, and he asked, "Hey, I'm talking to this girl or whatever on social media. What do you think are some things or whatever I should do?" And he's a lot younger, a lot more immature. So I told him the same things I did. I said, well, look, I don't encourage anybody to do this necessarily. If God does it, you follow the same principles. And if God's in it, then he'll allow it to work out. Talk to your parents. Make sure she talks to her parents. Make sure that she talks to her parents, and then have serious conversations. Let's talk about, like you said, what's your favorite color? You know, I'm not 18. I'm not wanting to flirt. I'm past that. I'm, you know, let's get the ring on the finger. But there's serious conversations to be had. And so he did that. He went back and he asked her to make sure that her parents knew, and he had some serious questions, and she quickly said, "Oh, I think we should just be friends." You know, so it just proves the point. You have to be serious. You have to be, you know, ultra careful, especially in long distance. Communication was a little bit more difficult, but you have to be willing to communicate extra. I didn't tell him any juicy things. I don't know if you want to get in on anything I left out. What did you do? You followed me first, so you tell me your perspective.
Well, and we had mutual friends, so that's how I saw your picture, or, you know, Instagram algorithms, and it came up. He knew 2 people that I knew, so. But.
Why did you comment on my video?
Because you're so cute.
You're so handsome.
Yes, that's what I wanted to hear.
Again, I was 24 at the time, and I was graduated from college. I dated one person, not in college, but after college. And no one at my church that was interested or could see a potential with. So I saw your Instagram, and I saw, you know, from the little that I did see, you seem to have, you know, be a guy of good character and mature. I saw you had a house already. But it was nerve-wracking. You know, it wasn't something I'd ever done. It wasn't in my nature necessarily to do, but I, you know, took the chance, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we sat here and listened to all the stories, I will say that clearly God's hand was in every single joint, joining together. And I will say that as I sit and listen, I want to be clear to those that are listening, maybe some singles that are listening. Hopefully that you caught the reoccurring theme over and over again, talking to parents and pastors and authorities, and there was probably a boatload of communication between me and my wife and Will and David and Jewel and even Pete, because Pete was willing to come out here. That was extensive, and for the sake of the parents, I will say, first of all, I believe that God put the right people together. So Mom and I are very happy with the spouses that our kids have been blessed with. Would you say?
Yes.
But at the same time, it was a nerve-wracking time for me. Can't speak for my wife, because I felt many times that I had to push, because maybe not so much with Jewel, but with Pete. He's a man. He was 27, and then the boys had been living under the shadow of my authority all these years, and sent them off, and they were on their own, and definitely at times stepping out as men, making decisions for themselves. And it's nerve-wracking because, you know, you want to ask tons of questions and make sure they're thinking of things that you see. And so there's always the undercurrent of feeling like I was getting in their business when it wasn't always welcome. But they'll testify if they're honest. I didn't care. I was going to push and get in their business because I thought this was the most important decision outside of their salvation that they'd be making to date. And as a dad and as parents, I wasn't just going to stand by. And I didn't care what fundamentalism thought. And the truth is, I didn't care what their girlfriends thought. I didn't care what their girlfriends' families thought. Well, he's pushy. And that happened. You were dating a girl, and I was very pushy. And I had her number from the beginning. But because I was the way I was, it helped her to make a decision that she didn't want to go any further in that relationship. And the same things happened to you. And I'm not saying this to take any credit, because I think sometimes that's what the guys always feel like I'm taking credit because they got great wives. So I did that. I'm saying that I wouldn't change a thing. I will, when I'm uncomfortable with something, I will ask questions. I will push. And there were things in each one of these dating experiences and engagements that I did not like, that I was not comfortable with. But after pushing and having communication, my job was just simply to step back and let God continue to lead these men to make the decisions they needed to make. And I was only concerned that they were not marrying unsaved and unequally yoked. The Bible says very clear in 2 Corinthians 6:14, be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. And I always took that not just as someone who wasn't saved, but someone who didn't believe like us. And Reeves' family is a unique family. And I felt like with the girls that they had to be very wise because the men they married were going to lead them. So they would have to digest our family and be able to maneuver that. So I just felt like I wanted my girls to choose wisely. And whereas I thought my boys, they have a responsibility to lead their wife and teach their wife. So that started in the dating time. There was obviously a point of where they had to lead their girlfriends, and they had to be the leader in the relationship. In other words, they're the ones that went and talked to the parents. They're the ones that talked to the pastors. They're the ones that, they had to show their girlfriends that they were the leaders. And I knew that the girls that they were dating didn't understand our world, but I was confident that the boys were able to open that world up and show what that's all about. And so it wasn't easy for me. I can't speak for my wife, but it wasn't easy for me. A lot of nights awake, just hoping they were making the right decision. So,
Yeah, I'd definitely say there's nothing more humbling than raising kids. Because you realize how fallible you are, and obviously, but for the grace of God, but for the grace of God, I'm serving the Lord. And so even more when you look at your kids and the struggles that they have to go through. And it's not easy looking for a saved person to marry. But our standard is so much higher than that. And, parents out there, don't be ashamed of that. And don't, the standard should be high. They should want, you have to teach your children from a young age that they want to marry someone who wants to serve God with their life, not just someone who's saved and attending church. It's just a big difference.
That is the bar, I think. At least we ended up believing in our head that all of four of our kids wanted to serve God with all their heart. So that was the bar by their choices that was set. I felt like sometimes in the chase you get excited and you can lose sight of asking the questions that would expose the one you're dating to, what's to prevent, there's a question even on this chat. Someone says, yeah, I want to serve God, and yeah, I want to do that. And then you get married, and then they change their mind. And, there's no preparation for something like that. You can't know. There's no way you can know for sure. So a lot of that's just walking in faith, but also exercising a very high pressure environment from the dad and the authority over top of the kids, knowing that there's going to be a little bit of resistance, but pushing them to understand the reason for that is there are people who get married, their spouses, their girlfriends, tell them in all sincerity, yes, I want to do it. I want to serve God, only to get into it and then change their mind and take the men right out of the ministry. So,
and there are a lot of things I think that were even said that help prevent that kind of a situation. Number one is that person already serving the Lord. Yeah. I mean, thankfully, because the guys were older, Kaylee was graduating from college. She was already proving before she was dating him what kind of a girl she was. What was her character? Was she serving the Lord before she even met him? And I think Courtney, clearly, she dated a guy before David, and that was her biggest, question in her mind. Is this guy really want to serve the Lord? Is he wanting to be involved in things at church? And that's what caused that hesitation and that unrest in your heart. And so even just that story told me she wanted somebody who did want to serve God. And so it is hard because you can see people be attracted to your kids, whether they're guys or even your daughters, and not know if they're being attracted to the good character traits and the godly qualities of your children, or if it's just they think they're cute or they think they're pretty. I think every single one of our kids dated somebody before. Well, no, but you had other guys interested in you. You didn't date them though. But and so I just find it amazing how every single story is so different. There is no, I think sometimes when you're bringing kids up, it depends on what church you're in, but I know when I was growing up, it was like, you would go to college, you would get married. You would meet that guy, you would graduate, and you'd get married. Like everybody was going to do that. And then nobody did that. Like in my family of 6 kids, none of us worked that way. And my children, none of them worked exactly that way. And so, realizing that God has a different path for each and every person, but each and every one of us has to be responsible to have a walk with God. I remember sitting down the Christmas before I went home, right before we got engaged. And I knew that I loved my husband to be. We weren't engaged yet, but I knew I was, and I prayed, and I remember saying, Lord, if this is not what you have for me, I'm not going to go home, because I knew if I was around him, that I would, the side of me that just liked him would, and so I had to know in my heart that this was God's will for me, not just my will for me. And it's very difficult when you're dating to be able to distinguish between the two. And the only thing you can do is be doing everything right that you know to do. And the parents and the pastors
are involved.
It just, you cut any one of those out, and your process is broken. And you're probably, because we can fool ourselves into believing, oh, he said, he's going to be. And, they're not serious. But someone who's not Twitter pated can see things about the person that you're interested in.
We really pushed the communication part with the authorities, wanting the girls to talk to their parents. And, of course, we didn't talk to them. We had to talk to the boys. And, of course, Pete's a different case because he submitted himself under my authority. So I was able to work with him, know more about him. His dad's in Japan anyway, so it was kind of far away. But when he joined our church, he placed me over him as his pastor. So it was a great, unique opportunity to get to know the guy that's interested in marrying my youngest daughter. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I had a lot of liberty given to me in a way I didn't have with my own boys, which it's not a right or wrong thing. They were all exactly what they were, but they were all different challenges. They were all different circumstances that required different insight. But
and I am so thankful for the spouses, pastors, and parents, because I remember after David talked to Pastor Kavanaugh, me asking him, "So, what did you say? What did he say? What did you say? What did he say?" And hearing some of the advice that Brother Kavanaugh gave you, and thinking that's really good, like something. And even when you had asked about her, and how on target he was. Not just saying, "Oh, she's a wonderful girl, that's perfect." He was willing to say, "Well, this is what you'll have to watch out for." And
yeah, he actually gave me. I just remember this, but he gave me a list of all her things that she did wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, "What? I didn't hear that one."
I just remembered this, but he said, I don't remember what I asked, but I think I asked about timeline or something like that, or what expectations were in his opinion for people who are a little bit older but still having to do long distance. And he said, well, I always tell people by 6 months, you
should
ought to know. If you don't know, get out of it. And we got engaged right 5 months, 6 months, right.
And that helped me as a mom
yeah.
too, to feel like, okay, we're on the same page. Her pastor, it's just a comfort to know people who love the Lord can see the same things for the young people.
But that's the only thing we had back home to go on to give us really good comfort, was hearing that you guys were having those conversations with those authorities and seeking that counsel. That because we're disconnected. There's nothing nothing we could do. You're men. You can go off and marry whoever you want. But we also knew that we all had pretty much unspoken in a way coveted together that we wanted to make sure your choices for spouses would help the family, not hurt the family. And our concerns through the years was always looking at Christmases and Thanksgivings and seeing what our life could become if any one of you would have just decided you're going to go kamikaze and go your own way and do your own thing. So I just praise the Lord, that to me, all of the kids had a heart to please the Lord, first of all. They wanted wives and husbands that would please the Lord, serve the Lord, and that it was important to all of them that they, at the very least, had their own parents' approval. And in most every case, we felt at the same time they cared that we approved as well. So
Yeah.
And I always said, I don't pick your spouses. I just veto. If I thought there was something that was very drastically wrong, I would say, hey. And as far as I knew, every one of my children said, if it ever came to the point where Dad was vetoing something, we were going to listen to that. I know you told me right before you got engaged.
Right before you got engaged.
You told me, Dad, if there's something that you think I won't do it. It was in Starbucks. We had that conversation, and when you said that, I was like,
this must be the right one.
I was done. I was done really fighting, pressing on. I thought, well, okay, man's going to give up what he wants because he's trusting that God will give his leadership the right thing. I can go with that. So if it's your decision. If that's what you want, then it's a good deal. Let's do it.
Yeah, and two things I was thinking of. One is kind of, I would say minor, but really in today's day and age it's not minor, and that is we didn't allow our kids to even think about dating in high school. I mean, that there's time for that, but getting graduated, nobody needs to be getting serious with a guy when they're 17, 18. They don't even know themselves yet.
Right.
So we didn't allow our kids to get into relationships. Not that we had to tell them no and put our foot down. We just taught them that way from when they were young, and so it just wasn't an issue.
They never came and said, "Why can't I date?"
Yeah,
so-and-so?"
no. You
we were always on the same page, pretty much, and
Right.
and it did help that there weren't a lot of
choices. And then the other thing is, I know it's kind of popular. I've seen it on social media. People saying, "Well, my child is 18. I've raised them to, pray and ask God, and I'm here if they want advice, but I'm not going to tell them what to do anymore." And I think biblically, that is just it's against God's word. God's word, nowhere in God's word does it say, as a parent, there's a magic age of 18 stamped on the bottom of their foot, and now you are no longer responsible for their choices. Now, clearly, control versus influence. The older they get, the less control you have, the more influence it is, and it has to be their choice. They have to have given you their heart at a younger age.
I think that's a sign that it's not right if your young people are pushing leadership out. They should want to pull leadership in. It says something about the way you raised your kids, that there were a lot of mistakes made, that they can't trust you at that point. Because I even think today, as I pastor now 3 of my children that are now married and they all have spouses, there are many areas where I have no power in, but it doesn't stop me from injecting or pushing, and they got to make decisions for themselves. But I don't feel my job's done, and it may rub raw sometimes, but I think there's wisdom in and pay attention to that. And I just don't feel like my job's done until I'm dead. So y'all start praying for me to die. I was working on it the other day with the dog. So.
And I think in terms of the timeline, I think that everybody's listening needs to pay attention to how old all of us were married.
Yeah,
I mean, Peter's 28, Bud was 26,
Actually,
I was 25.
It's kind of interesting. Will and Kaylee are in college and got married right at the end of it. And then you two were both out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I was completely out of college. Jewel was halfway.
Yeah.
I had 1 year left when
So
we got married.
she, it was actually one of the things that Pastor had asked me, that Jewel would stay in college and finish, even if we got married before she was finished. That was one of the things that we had talked about, and it was something that he felt that she needed to do, and also talking to Jewel, that's what she wanted anyway, and it worked out great.
And you were willing to make that commitment to say, no, I'm going to help her, make sure she finishes.
And because you were here,
Yeah.
I really got to see your integrity. And so it gave me a lot of peace that she chose the right one.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when I look at my kids' spouses, to be able to see their integrity tells me they chose the right one. And that, doing right in spite of how they feel and what they want personally, that integrity shows through.
I remember I didn't want to get married until after I had graduated, and we had that conversation, and you're like, okay, here's a question. Is he the one? Do you love him? And I'm like, it's like in my head, I'm like, yeah, that's true. I mean, what's the difference? If I'm going to finish college, he's already made the commitment to let me finish college. I want to. He knows I do. He's on the same page as you.
Mm-hmm.
Why wait a whole another year?
I did the same
of
thing
engagement?
with JT.
It's almost a backwards conversation because most of the time the kids are like, but I'll finish, but I'll finish.
Yeah.
But I gave the same advice to JT. I said, if you'll finish college, you can marry
Emily.
She was done with college, and it was a little more risky there because he's a leader. He said, "Oh, I got what I came for. Bye." But no, his integrity through the 3 years. Was it 3, 2, 3, 2.5? 2.5 years. He just constantly, our battles and discussions prove that he was a man of his word, and he will keep his word. So that helped me to say, as his pastor, I think it is the will of God for you two to get married. So.
Well, can I pose this question to everybody?
Yeah.
In perspective of, or from the outlook of those who are listening, in terms of growing up IFB, for young people or people that aren't married, what is something that you found in your spouse to be, whether when you were dating, before when you first started talking, that led up to the engagement, whatever, something that you saw in them that made you maybe not just checked off the box, but I don't want to say made you know at that moment you were going to marry them, but was important to you in having in a spouse that you're like, this is God's will, maybe affirmed a little bit in your mind. This is somebody that would make a good spouse. Just to kind of bring up maybe some qualities that people should look for.
Well, for me, as a completely different situation than all you, I sat inside a prison, and God showed me Psalm 37, 4 and 5. And I realized that if I was going to get out of prison and stay out of prison, I had to have a wife that was rooted in God and loved the Lord and wanted to do right. Of course, my mindset and understanding of what that looked like was an Amish woman with a rolling pin going, "You will do what I say," And I was just so set that my life, I would never return to the prison. I would never return to this kind of life. I was willing to marry an Amish lady with a rolling pin, big fat woman, to keep me straight, and I would trust that God would have me fall in love with her. But that was at that time was a set of verses that God put in front of me, and I made that decision that I would find the right kind of woman that loved the Lord and would serve God. And then so when I met Jill, after a series of conversations, I found out her life verses were Psalm 37, 4 and 5. And I was like, But I think as far as her personally, I think it was the conversations we had. She knew so much more than me spiritually, but she never, she would never make me feel like I couldn't be the leader. So And I could tell when I wasn't making all the right decisions or saying things exactly the right way. And she was like light years ahead of me in the lingo and the understanding, but she was very gracious and kind. The very things that irritate me that she does for other people when I'm saying something about them, and she finds all the good in them, and it irritates me, but that's what she did for me, and she found the good and believed in me. So I think that's what I needed at that time. I needed somebody that was going to be with me the rest of my life and believe that God was going to use me.
Yeah, it's funny how each of us can probably look at some things in our story and want to give a caution to somebody else because, there are things about your story that are unique. And like you would say, don't just go on social media and look for a spouse. There would be things about probably your story you would say maybe not always just, get married before you finish college. There's so many things that are sometimes not maybe what someone would expect. And I mean, I feel like, when we were dating, I knew the counsel, not a specific person telling me, but just in general, that when you marry someone, the more things you have in common, the easier your marriage is going to be. And I knew, of course, his background compared to mine was like night and day. Yeah. And even while we were dating, I knew that was going to cause, that it wasn't going to be easy. I mean, I knew I was marrying someone who did not grow up a Christian. And I saw him struggle with things. And I think that's, you asked if there was a one thing. I don't think there's one thing. I think what he mentioned about being the spiritual leader, I think when we talked, knowing, there was just so many things that had to line up. But one of them was knowing that he respected what I had to say, or my experience and my knowledge and stuff that we would have serious talks, and it wasn't like, go away, be quiet, I'm the man, I will lead you. I would have not had any confidence in our relationship if that's how it had been. So just his openness to grow in the Lord, and I had to learn to step back after we got married. I had to learn, okay, he the other thing is I never doubted that he would be the leader. I think you all know his personality. I didn't doubt that he would lead. So that was important to me. But I just think the most important thing is just going back to your parents, your pastors, that all helps give you the kind of confidence that you need. But in the end, you do have to sit there and make that choice yourself. Say, is this what God has for me? And there are times, I don't know if there's ever been times in you guys' life, but I know after we got married, there were times where I was like, what did I do? Did I make a mistake? When it was hard. And then I would have to take a step back and say, no, I know I was in the will of God, and rest in that. And the great thing is, when you're walking in the will of God, let's say my husband gets out of the will of God. It happens. It happens to people, innocent people whose wife or husband goes away from the Lord. But that never stops you from loving the Lord. That it will make your life difficult, make your life hard. But if you're determined to serve God and love the Lord, and I think there's a lot of promises in the Bible that come with that attitude, because it helps keep your spouse right. By just even having the attitude, whether the man or whether the woman, you take that responsibility to be right with the Lord on yourself, and that helps keep your spouse straight.
I actually recall a conversation I had with Mrs. Smith. This was right before Pete came out in May, to actually meet everyone. Of course, everybody knew I was writing him. I didn't have a picture of him, so I tried Googling him. Couldn't find him. He was nowhere. You still can't find him. Just kidding. Yeah, so I couldn't find a picture. I remember having a conversation with Mrs. Smith going, is it possible to marry the first person you date? Because for me, that was he was the first person I'd ever written, guy I had
jumped through all the hoops.
Yeah. So I feel like with all of the writing we had done, literally our letters were 30 pages long.
Okay, well, you need to
but they were
explain
week
how
by
that
week.
was done.
Week by week.
Yeah.
But they were, day by day. But everything that I could see his love for the ministry and his church, his bus ministry, all of these things that I wanted in a man to serve the Lord, to want to serve God. And it wasn't just, I go to work and then I, eat cheese balls and then go ride a horse, just stupid stuff. It was actually ministry related. And I feel like when I asked Mrs. Smith that question, I think I knew in the back of my head, because I could see the willingness to want to serve God. And for me, that was the biggest thing. I was like, I'm not going to date someone who doesn't love him or doesn't love my family. And I could see that in the letters that he wrote. And we were talking about this earlier. A guy had called my dad and asked if he could write me. And I think 2 weeks before that, he had come out and visited us. But us 4 kids had a conversation with him, and he's like, well, I just want to be a computer guy like my dad, and just all these different things. And I'm like, okay, well, that's messed up. When dad came to me and told me that, he's like, well, hey, this kid wants to see if he can, write you. And dad was I was going like this as I asked you. But in the back of my head, I had already made a decision, because you can feel when someone's interested, and you don't give them anything, but at the same time, it's coming. So in my head, I had already shut him out, because he clearly didn't want to serve God with his life. And because I had made that decision then, I feel like it led me in a course where when I wrote him and he wrote me, I could see that willingness to love the Lord.
May I just say something quick? Because I think it's an important part of these young people that are listening. To be fair, that young man, he did go somewhat the way that he said he was going to go. So I don't think he was dishonest to that point. And he would argue that he is serving the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I always get a little bit frustrated with people who say they're serving the Lord, but they're not really serving the Lord. And, you had an appetite for someone that would
be all in.
Well, yeah, that understood that service was through the church. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just independent. As a husband, I'm just independently serving the Lord. Right. The full-time serving the Lord, that's what you were looking for. That's somebody that understood that was brokered through what I'm doing in the church, mm-hmm. the local New Testament church. And Pete always showed that that's how he felt his service was.
I also did want to say this for girls who are looking for men. Our dad always taught us girls, it's not you who picks what you do or where you go. So have a submissive spirit, be willing. Mm-hmm. So instead of, being called when you're 15 to be a missionary's wife, mm-hmm. that's not your decision. It's God's decision. You be willing to submit to whatever God wants you to do. And I feel like God gave me exactly what I had asked him for. I said, mm-hmm. now he doesn't have to be a pastor. That'd be okay if he is. I don't really want to be a pastor's wife, because I know I know what mom went through. But I'm willing, if it comes to that. I said, the only thing is that he has to want to work in the ministry. That's just the biggest thing for me.
Amen. Pete, what's the one thing?
Pretty. Thanks for being honest.
There's sheer honesty right there.
Amen.
Short,
all
sweet.
Right, guys,
everybody knows. Everybody knows that's number one. So. Yeah. Not the most important, but important.
What are you talking about?
Some people are spiritual.
I'm just honest.
Some people are honest. There you go.
Which is spiritual. So
it's good.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can't get to the spirit if I'm stuck in the flesh. I can't get past your face. I can't see your heart.
He has a great personality.
Sing.
On my end, it really wasn't any one thing. I mean, she was here serving. She enjoyed what she was doing. She was involved with everything. And she always had a willingness and a desire to serve Jesus and be a part of. She was teaching in the kindergarten. I think the first year I was here, and the second year, pretty much after we got married too.
And working daycare.
saw her working in bus ministry, saw her attitude and her spirit around her family, and it's just a blessing to have. So I really can't point to any one thing where it was just, because you posed the question, where it was just, oh, I knew. It was like, I knew probably the first portion of period of time was stalking in the Capitol, that she was available, and it was an opportunity, but then getting to know her through the letters. And to be fair, how that worked was, okay, she said our letters were 30 pages. Okay. But it was, instead of writing one letter and then sending them off, what we decided to do was basically I would just pick, I think it was Tuesday or something like that, every week, would just mail off whatever I had. And that was it.
But you wrote every day.
But I would write 2 days a week, maybe all days a week, doesn't matter what it was, but whatever I wrote that week, I would just send it off. One of the record, which was about 30 pages.
Like
So,
35. Wow.
handwritten, redacted.
But let's clarify, they weren't sheet 8 by 11 sheets.
Yeah.
They were
double-sided.
You know, notepad
Yeah.
sheets.
Yeah, well, it was what
I think we still have our bag of letters somewhere.
We have our
right?
bags.
We have ours. They're
Our
in
box.
a box someplace.
I've wasted
They're-
so much ink over the years.
They're on that window.
This is the new generation.
Wasted.
It was text and email. and-
No,
See,
we still wrote.
Me and Jewel are
We
both
wrote.
very bitter
Guess you didn't
Very
get
bad.
text.
that we didn't get to call until way late in our relationship. Not that we needed to. We were
No, we were right here.
in the
Lived
same
here.
town, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we had some advantages.
There were reasons for everything.
Yes, I know. So we're still very bitter. Anyway,
It wasn't because we loved them or trusted them more or didn't trust you. It was just different. Everybody's different places, different times. And
Like you said, you
And as the
guys were writing because you were long distance.
Yeah.
Right. And
We
then-
still
to
wrote
start
when he
off.
got here.
Yeah, but you could now talk
Yeah.
to each other. So
yeah. Then we
Kind
brought
of-
texting into it. And honestly, all that came about through stages, and it was brokered through Pastor Reeves, and it just progressed, and it was adequate. It was necessary. One of the things that I did want to bring up was I stated before that when I was in college, actually, I was engaged, and that was it wasn't a bad experience whatsoever. In my mind, it was actually a very good learning experience. And of course, in college, you go to any Christian college, Baptist college these days, you're gonna the pressure is you gotta find your spouse, your mate, for the rest of your life in that 4-year span. If you don't, then you're pretty much a loser. I mean, that's pretty much how the culture is. And anybody who isn't at least in a dating relationship somewhere in there and has a prospect before they graduate, they're very weird. And
what's wrong with you?
Well,
And it works the opposite side too.
Yeah.
So if you're successful, then they go off thinking they're the who's who of fundamentalism. Look, I got married. I came here and got my spouse.
Right.
So there's flip
anyway,
sides
so
to it.
I'm stating that to say there was the pressure there to have
Something
to get that
accomplished.
Going.
Yeah.
And I didn't start, like I said, in a relationship till I was in a serious one. I had asked people out on dates. We got on activities, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. But it wasn't until my junior year I met a girl. Called her dad. It was actually one of the things she said. Well, you have to call my dad to in order for us to go out on this activity. And it wasn't anything big. It was literally just like sitting in chapel together. But she wanted me to call her dad, which I thought was, okay, I'll do it. Jumped through that hoop. He was real nice, talked to him, got permission, and then went through that. And basically, and I want to put it on this. It was probably the last half of my master's year. We were both, she was in her senior year, I was in my master's, and both fixing to graduate. And I just wasn't getting, honestly, even at that point, I wasn't having 100% peace about when I was praying and saying, hey, is this going to be the rest of my life? And that kind of thing. And honestly, God, it sticks in my mind mainly because I had fasted for a period of time over that one subject. And I am almost positive that God answered me. Well, I am positive because of what happened. But I had an opportunity before, because before the end of the school year, we got engaged, and then that following Christmas, we'd both been graduated. I went back to my home church for a few months, started working a secular job, but it wasn't until Christmas time that it was broken off. but God had to do it a hard way on me. I'm just saying that because obviously I got married when we met. I graduated in 2010. We didn't meet till 4 years later. But if I had pushed my own will, what I wanted, and if God hadn't intervened, and that whole situation hadn't been broken off, and it was very tragic. It was very emotionally problematic. It was hard. Was horrible. It was the worst. Honestly, it was the worst day of my life, kind of deal. But looking back on that, if I had just been willing to follow God's leading on some things, and it wasn't anything with her. She was honestly same standards of dating, honestly, that we went through. Hers and her ideals in her family's they were higher than what I was expecting. And of course, we followed all the college rules, but even beyond that, there were some things. So never a problem with that. We never held hands. We never touched. We never did anything along those lines. And I'm very thankful and grateful that we had that,
Right.
because all of that happened with my wife. After we got married.
After you,
Right.
Except for that one time where Pastor Reeves had her push me in the lake.
Oh, that was awesome.
Which did happen.
Yes.
She did it!
I had permission.
Oh, yeah, that was when I knew that it was to be, because she pushed me.
Yeah,
that's
In
it.
the lake. She touched me.
She touched me. Oh, she touched me. No, the thrill.
You know, that's actually kind of interesting that we have all talked about all these relationships, and not one of us have even mentioned the fact of what you just said. No touching, no kissing, no hugging, no, messing around before
And honestly,
before you
biblically
got
speaking-
married.
Yeah.
at least that we know about.
And and so many people thinking that's just impossible to do.
Yeah.
And yet here it is, and we didn't even make it a thing. Like, it was not even. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
But I bring that up to say that if you as a young person are just desperately, the thing you want to do is get married, you can do that. But you're going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And the way to get around to not make a mistake is make sure you're under your leadership, make sure you're praying, make sure that you check everything through God, through your leaders, through your parents, through however it works. And if there's any red flags that it should be called off,
Well,
do it.
and if you love the Lord and you want to serve the Lord, remember,
Yeah.
once you're married, it's not something you can undo. And that can change the trajectory of where you
Very
end
much
up
so.
at. So,
Right.
Will?
one thing.
I had a long time to sit here and think. So
He's got a whole list.
I was thinking about it. Everyone said this. There's really too many things. I can't even really say one specific situation that was bigger than anything else. I will say when it comes to our relationship and as it developed, and I think it's an important point that was made, that everybody's relationship is going to be different. If there's one thing I could stress for a young person, it is you need to have a walk with God, because not everybody has a Pastor Reeves.
That's right.
And I think where I grew the most was to realize that it doesn't matter that I do have a Pastor Reeves.
Right.
I still have to have a walk with God, because my relationship with him is what guides me in his will. Not being told turn left, turn right, but finding God's will and then doing what God says and making sure your leadership is a very important part of finding God's will. But that understanding that
It's on you.
it's on me. It's on me. And I think as a man, when you go into a marriage, if you can't figure that out before you get married, you will blow with the wind of whatever everybody wants instead of figuring out what God wants, getting counsel, doing what you need to do, but making the decision. And I think that's something that when it came to our relationship, that I was very refreshed. We would have, we would read the Bible in the mornings together. It wasn't every morning because we had classes and stuff, but I think it was Sunday mornings before we would go on the bus. In our second semester, we would sit and we'd read the Bible together and we would just talk. Honestly, that's something I learned from when we were kids, that Dad would read the Bible and say, what do you think that means? And just how much Dad could learn about where we were spiritually by doing that, to know whether or not we were developing. And just my ability to, in our conversations, find out, is this not just does this person want to serve the Lord, but like, is there a depth to their walk with God?
Right.
Do they love the Lord? Do they, is it just, I want to serve Jesus? Or is it, and I think that's the big thing.
Activity.
I think that's the big part of, when people say, well, they told me before that they love the Lord. Okay, but did your conversations,
Right.
the Bible says you should know them by their fruits. The Bible talks about your speech bewrayeth you. What comes out of your mouth is very indicative of what's going on in your heart. And if you're someone who is all about as a young person, here's the thing, like when you're young, it's all fresh, it's all new. You get butterflies when someone looks at you for longer than 3 seconds. I mean, it's like, is this the one? But the older you get, the more you realize, I need to realize what the main thing is here. And so I think, if anything, just those times that we could spend together reading God's word or talking about something that happened in the ministry. And I never felt like I had to push that. I had to push, hey, let's talk about the ministry. You just did it. You just talked about the Bible. You talked about God's word. I could feel myself, the desire growing to be a more spiritual person because I felt that responsibility. I was like, man, I can't be a fake. And I appreciate that about her, that she wasn't fake. She wasn't say one thing to me, to my face, and then go talk to somebody else and say something totally different, and then undermine and manipulate and see any of that. And I appreciate that, because I think honesty, Pete, as much as we're laughing, honesty is such an important part. Important part. It's one of the most important parts of having a good relationship. And if any party undermines honesty and talks behind someone else's back, we would never be where we are today. I'm thankful that I don't, when I'm frustrated with Kay, call my dad and say, I'm so frustrated.
Right.
Or when she's frustrated with me, she calls her mom and goes, I'm so frustrated. And when we're frustrated, each of us take a turn with Everly and tell her. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We talk to each other. And that's been the theme from the beginning. And I think I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Kay has a specific story. I know she does. And so you go ahead. You can tell that one.
I remember that we were having a bus picnic. All the buses at the college would have a big day at the park. And we would pick a park and go to it, have a big day. And Will was helping that day on our bus route. And we had several people going through, just coming to eat the fun jumps.
Eat fun jumps?
Eat and the fun jumps. That would hurt going down. And we were at the very end of our picnic, and I saw a man walking down the street. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go give him a track. I'm going to go witness to him. I remember going out into the road and giving this man a track.
He was walking on the other side of the street. Definitely a shady-looking fella. Not that you shouldn't be compassionate, but just mind you, a single young lady, all by herself.
She's going to tell the story.
I'm trying to tell you from my perspective here a little bit.
And at this point, Will and I weren't even talking yet. But I remember turning around and going back to the shelter, and Will just standing there at the parking brick, just standing there looking at me.
It wasn't quite like that, but yeah.
Yeah, it felt like that. I remember walking back over to the table, and Will walks over to the picnic table and says, "Don't do that again." And I said, "Yes, sir." And as crazy as this may seem, it really was at that point where I knew that he was a leader and that he would protect me and watch out for me. And I had gone back to the car, and I was talking to my friends, and they said, yeah, he was standing over by the parking brick the whole time, making sure you were okay. And if that man tried to do anything, he was going to be there. So that was really the time that I knew. And there was a peace in my heart, because I didn't grow up in an independent fundamental Baptist home. I didn't have a dad who was protective over me, and I think that was something that I always wanted. Someone who would watch out and help guide me and wouldn't be afraid to say the things that I didn't necessarily want to hear. So that was really the time that I knew and had that peace in my heart. And that was even before we started dating.
I wanted to make sure to fill in a couple of details here. So this was after I had started coming over in the evenings and we would play the card games.
So you had a relationship.
Yeah, we had a relationship. It wasn't just this like I look at this random single girl. Don't ever do that again. It wasn't like that. It was like we had somewhat of a friendship, and she was actually helping with our bus routes, picnic in the park, and so we had a bus captain that did most of the planning, but when it came to the leadership side of things, he had asked me to head up a lot of the organization of getting things done. So I was organizing a lot of the workers that were there. Like, you ladies work with these kids, you work with these kids. And when I saw her go to witness to this guy, I wasn't mad that she wanted to witness to him. I was frustrated that I think that maybe the knowledge hadn't been given to a lot of the young people to...
Don't approach a guy.
Yeah,
randomly in
let's
the
be
park.
smart about this, If it wasn't like a couple of feet away. It was like, we're talking about 20, 30 yards away. And so I did. I went up to the parking lot. I walked around. I didn't stare at her. I think it's all in her head, but maybe I did. I don't know. But when she came back, I wanted her to know, like, hey, don't do that. That's not smart. But I do remember also I was concerned. I was like, wanted to know. I'm paying attention. Okay, you can't just wander off and me not notice. So I don't know where I get that from, but anyway.
I also have a story that sticks out to me. The first time that David came and visited me, it was, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after we had met or started talking. And he came and visited on his spring break. And that weekend was the last service for my pastor, Pastor Gomez. He was retiring that weekend, that Sunday. So on Saturday, they ran all the buses and had services for all the bus workers and all the bus kids. And so he was going to be there that weekend, and he knew, and I told him, you're going to be here, but I don't really want to miss out on, the bus kid service and still running the buses and whatnot. And my brother-in-law, Cody, was a bus captain on one of the buses, and he was there at the table, I think it was Friday night. And we're kind of talking about the next day, what we should, the plan of activities and whatnot. And Cody actually asked him, he said, do you want to ride the bus tomorrow? Do you want to preach on the bus? And David, without skipping a beat, sure, yeah, it sounds great. And so he did. On Saturday, he preached a message on the bus. And I think I really needed that just because we didn't know each other that much. And being long distance, we didn't have too many times where we were face to face and could really see each other. And there was a lot of trust that had to go into it. So to see him just jump in and be so invested and to do it so well, not that he just did it and had a good attitude, but he did it well, was really special.
I think there was a revival on that bus that day, right?
There was in one girl's heart.
Did she preach on the bus?
Yeah. Yeah. When she first preached to me, she did it so well. No, I think not to just pick one single moment, but just from the very beginning, what was different about her than everybody else that I talked to in the past. Not that there's that many people, but was from the very beginning, she articulated clearly that she wanted to complete me. And that was a little bit unique for me because I remember previous relationships where I felt like it was a tug of war for me to say, I feel like the Lord wants me to do this rather. But even from the very first few times that we talked, I just always sensed that she was willing to say, back me basically. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to do this? Let's do it. And even though she may not have been prepared or necessarily felt like she was worthy or whatever, she always had the spirit of, let me help you. Whatever you're doing, make your life mine. Let me help you. And I knew that was something that I needed. And I know sometimes she gets a little embarrassed, I guess, because she's technically the first person to reach out to me. You know, she messaged me, and I know sometimes, and I know sometimes.
Hey, don't feel bad. My wife chased me until I caught her.
Yeah. And I think, I've told her this before, but I needed that. And God knew that I needed somebody who wanted to complete me, who wanted to chase me, I guess. And I mean, she just messaged me one time, and I bugged her the rest of the time. But so I think that was it for me.
That's good. That's good. Well, there's so much said here today, and I'm sure we could continue to digest all of the dating and and we didn't even talk about it. Do you call it courting? Do you call it dating? We call it dating, but I personally think it's all the same. It's just people do things a little bit different. But the most important thing is, whatever you call it, keep God first. He has to be on the throne.
Right.
Second, you keep your parents and your pastors in line. And third, you keep your heart right.
Right.
Keep your heart right towards number one is towards the Lord. Number two is towards your authorities. Number three, keep your heart right on the issue, that issue of marrying somebody. For out of it are the issues of life, keeping your heart. So keeping the understanding that the most important decision you'll make after salvation is who you marry, because that sets everything else. Being sober when you're emotionally charged with Twitter-pated or whatever you want to call it, ooh, she winked at me, that was flirting, and not being sidetracked to the degree that you miss the huge flaws in somebody.
Right.
So making those good decisions. But let's cut to a song, and then we'll come back and answer questions.
We're going to go to a song, At the Right Time by the Epleys. Don't forget to send us your questions in the chat or 920-940-8275. At the Right Time. Good evening and welcome to the Third Degree, the segment where we answer your questions, no matter how difficult they may be. Have at it. Give us the third degree. Brother David, have we gotten any texts?
No.
Are you paying attention to it?
No, not last I checked a couple of weeks ago. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We do have one. I actually think this one was touched on already, but I'm going to go ahead and ask this one anyway. Laverne asked from... I got to make sure I asked this correctly. From all appearances, it appears that your significant other is saved and wanting to serve God, but then after marriage, you find just the opposite. What do you do? What advice?
Well, first of all, that's tragic. Something like that were to happen, but that's one of the reasons that I and Mrs. Reeves were hyper vigilant before they made their decisions and tried to build a relationship with our kids that would allow us to kind of be in with them in asking those questions. So knowing that was their choice, but always being that nagging ear, voice in their ear, does she read her Bible? Does she talk negative about her parents? Does she, you ask the good questions and bad questions. But now that the decision's made and now the person is shown that they're not interested anymore, or they don't want to live for God, you have to understand that may not be that they were lying in the past. People sometimes go bad, and over a period of time, whether it's they become less involved with church or they don't read their Bible, that can happen after you get married. So you're not really, I don't know if it's a mistake, but they need ministered to. And I guess if you're a man and you marry someone, the best thing you can do is take care of that spouse. Make sure the bills are paid and you stay engaged in conversations. I mean, if the person's not causing you marriage problems, she doesn't want to divorce you, continue to encourage her to go to church, and you love her. The Bible's very plain that you can win your spouse through conversation, and that's just not words. It's how you treat someone. So that's the only biblical advice I can give you, because I don't know the situation or what have you. In every case, when I've given that advice, people will say, I do that. And when I hear that tone, I know bitterness is set in, and people are really not focused on their responsibility to the Lord. They're just focused on what their spouse isn't giving them. So that's about. Do you have anything to add, Jill?
No, not really. I think that's exactly right. You know, and we say this often in marriage counseling to people. You cannot focus on the responsibility of the other person or what the other person is not doing or where they're lacking in their growth and their spiritual walk with the Lord. You have to focus on what you're supposed to be doing. And in so doing, that's how you minister best. And obviously it's different between a husband and a wife, because a husband is to lead. A wife is not charged with that responsibility, but a wife is an influence. You know, the Bible says in 1 Peter 3:1, likewise, you wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they may also without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. Right. So it's basically saying right there that the person doesn't want to obey God, but it's still telling the wife to be in subjection to them. At the same time, that wife is to be godly and to love the Lord, not to hold bitterness, not to be worried that, you know, her husband isn't being spiritual the way she thinks he should be. That's not her job. And every situation's different, but the most important thing for any single one of us is have a walk with God yourself and focus on that. And then if you're doing what's right, you'll be sweet, you'll be nice, you'll be loving, you'll be giving, you'll be forgiving. And that ministers to all the needs that are in the soul of a person that's hurt or making bad choices or whatever it is. So.
Jeff asked a question. If someone won $1 million and gave it to the church, would you accept it? If it was lottery winnings, I would accept it. I don't care what it was. You put it in the offering plate, it's not a gift to me.
The devil has it long enough.
I've never taken and went back to the offering plate, Jeff, and decided which $10 bill I was going to get rid of. If it's a free will offering. Mm-hmm. Now, do I agree with playing the lottery? Only if you tie. No, not at all. I don't agree with that at all. And I wouldn't say that I would be dishonest to that person who put the money in there and let them believe that, okay, now everything's okay. No, I wouldn't say that. If somebody wanted to get right with God because they played the lottery and they shouldn't have, they could put 100% of it in the offering. 100%. And that's between them and God. But you know, my job's not to go back there and pick out my staff's checks and go, this is their tithe check, but they didn't mean it. It just, that's just
not your job.
It's not my job. Nobody's job to do that. Just whatever comes in the offering plate, count it and put it in the bank account.
It was given to God, not Pastor Reeves, right?
Yeah, and even the ones that are given because maybe somebody gives to think that they're purchasing some influence. All I can say is the pastors need to just be man and not let that purchase anything. Nothing, no amount of money put in the offering plate here at this church purchases you anything. Mm-hmm. Nothing. I don't care who you are. You can't put enough money in the offering plate to buy your preacher.
I think that's the only way that you would arrive at an answer like that.
Yeah.
If you're a pastor who doesn't think that way, then you're someone who would think you could give money back out of the offering plate. I just can't wrap my mind around that. If someone put money in the offering plate, let me chase you down and give it back. It's not how it works. It's God's now.
Because then you'd have to.
$1 million check.
Those same type of people get mad, leave the church, and want their tithe back.
Right.
No, sorry, sucker.
It's God's. It's God's.
Well, then you'd have to be responsible for approving everybody's job because that's how they're getting their money. And what if
Well,
people
and
are
how
doing
do you-
things
right.
you don't even think
How
are
do you
right?
tell,
Yeah.
right? How do you tell if some of the money that so and so gave this Sunday is not money that they stole from someone?
What are you
or
going to
that
go ask them?
You just
Where'd you get this?
And if any churches have that policy and they don't want to accept it straight from the guy
You're
who
sent
won
to
it,
us.
I'll be the middle. I'll be the middle guy. If you want to give it to
accept
me,
that sacrifice.
yeah,
You will make
I
the
will.
sacrifice.
I will launder the money.
I will use
Whoa,
it.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
I will
whoa.
make it clean and give it to the church.
Exactly.
Peter,
Laundry the money.
cutting this out, cutting that out of the podcast.
Right?
Pete will give 10% of it.
Yeah.
Just give it to him.
My increase will be 10%.
So is that all the tough questions?
Yep.
I got one.
There was one.
What's yours?
For each one of you guys. As you got married, you became men. You became men.
That's a question?
No, I'm getting to the question.
Oh, okay.
I'm a real boy.
You just sit there and listen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You become men, and it means you are the king of your castles, the head of your homes. How has it been has it been a challenge for you to I don't know how to ask the question. You're in a church with a strong pastor, so have you felt like you had to say in your family, I have to do this because my dad says so? That's because you got to be your own man. You got to do what you think is right. Bottom line.
So to do it because dad says so, or even
Well,
if he says
I'm not
so?
the head of those homes,
Right.
So they have to make their decisions, and so, but they're in this family and they're in this church, and dad or pastor is a very strong leader.
So to be submissive and the leader at the same time.
yeah,
Have you come across that? I plead the fifth, so I do not wish to incriminate myself. Yes.
no, I think it's a
No.
a question I wanted to ask, not for any reason here, but because people, if anybody ever gets to work with their children through their single years, and then they get married and they get to work with them, then it's a transition that you have to go through, and you have to give your boys and son-in-law that space that they need to make their decisions. At the same time, you can't back away and crawl in a hole. So there's going to be times where that's difficult. So I guess I'm just asking, has that happened, and how have you dealt with it? I don't know. Any advice?
Well,
Man, these are
have to-
tough. These are supposed to be tough questions.
yeah, they are tough questions,
Okay.
so it's going to be a tough answer. The relationship that I have with you is extraordinarily unique when it comes to pastor. I mean, you wear a lot of hats in that sense. You're pastor, you're father-in-law, you're granddad to my kids. I work for you. So there's a lot of
Balancing.
no, not that one. There are times when the only reason in my mind why I would be doing whatever that is I am doing, it is only because it has come through the avenue of you. Whether it be one of those hats, doesn't matter. On an ordinary basis, I probably, in my head, am thinking, why in the world would I have ever have done that in the first? Now, that being said, I didn't do it for a bad reason, and it wasn't a bad thing that was done. I'm just saying it wouldn't have crossed my mind that it should be done that way or whatever. And I have honestly, any specific instance in mind. I'm really not. But I just know that there's been times where the struggle has been real in doing whatever it was, for whatever reason. How do I answer that? And ultimately speaking, then that it falls back on me because I have to make that decision to do it. So, and ultimately, it's my. I mean, that's why I'm saying it's an extraordinarily unique position because you wear a lot of hats when it comes to our
Can,
relationship.
Your wife
can I
wants to
say
answer.
something
No,
to help
you are
him?
not
Can-
allowed.
I'm not going to, like, I don't have any specific stories either, but I do know that when times like that do happen where he gets confused, because we'll have conversations, it's like, yes, because it's kind of confusing. Your dad, your pastor, your boss, your all these different hats. And it's like, what role am I supposed to be like sticking myself into here? And it does get confusing. We have conversations not all the time, but when those times happen, we discuss. And the ultimate answer is we look to God. He looks to God. And is it right? Is it wrong? Is something that pastor's having me doing, or dad, whichever hat it is, we have those conversations. And then I think ultimately he goes to God. And if it's something that he feels shouldn't happen, I think he comes to you and he discusses it with you, whether or not he should or he shouldn't. And I feel like conversation is a big thing. And that's something we are still learning.
Do you
Conversation.
feel respected that I feel that you're the leader of your home?
Yes and no. It's just yes and no. Like I said, it just depends on the situation. But ultimately speaking, it has to be up to me, and I can reject your input, influence, advice, whatever you want to call it. I can reject it if I want to, and that has been the case in some instances.
It's always gone well.
Well, it hasn't.
I'm teasing.
It's gone well. It's gone bad, poorly. It doesn't really matter how that goes. But I'm just saying that it's ultimately going to be up to me whether to follow or not, whether to take that advice as it was given and take it or not. So it depends. So there's wisdom in listening. There's wisdom I found in listening to Jewel and her input and her experience. And then there's wisdom I see on your end, usually happening mostly after the fact, okay, that does make sense now. And for the most part, that does happen. But there have been times where I know I have not followed it, and it hasn't been life-changing. I don't know. It's really. Are you recording?
It looks like he's recording.
You are being recorded.
No, but that's a great idea.
Recording the record.
Yes,
The whole
you
thing's
are being
recorded.
recorded.
I was like, why are you doing it?
That's funny. Sorry. I freaked you out there.
What in the world is he doing? Anyway,
You're just being honest. Majority of the
very
time, if there's
transparent.
conflict, it's hard because you are the man of your house, but you have strong leadership. And I do wear many hats. It's not just pastor saying, I suggest you do this as a church member.
Yeah, it's not.
But
just
it's
that.
some, but
just my
majority
boss saying
majority
you
of
should
the
do
time,
this.
it's your boss saying, I'm your boss.
Yeah.
Do what I tell you to do. It's not sin. Do what I tell you to do. And that's hard to swallow.
Well,
and then
okay, but that's completely separate from the household issue because that's a completely
right,
separate.
but it does.
entity.
But it does. At
It trickles through.
times,
Yes.
it just, at times,
Crosses over.
depending on how you receive instruction, that can filter down and affect other areas. So I'm just saying that you're right. There are 4 different avenues of influence there from one person, and that's not always easy. But I don't know. All I know is it's not easy to be an assistant pastor. I think actually being an assistant pastor is harder than being a pastor. Because I was one for...
All right, guys,
Oh,
on
wow.
3. 1, 2, 3.
We should record it.
It is recorded. I've said it multiple times, but anyway.
So that's my answer. My very long and diluted.
Yes.
Not diluted, but
Well, it was not an easy, but a really well framed question. So
Oh, was
Fire
it true?
away.
Okay. Do we have the answer? Oh, no. I think, and I've used this illustration before, Kay and I have never been married before. So when you get into this relationship, everything's brand new. You're learning. Every day is learning. And if you don't have that walk with God that's willing as the leader to say, well, I'm going to rest on what I believe God wants, then you won't be able to balance, I think, that relationship. Because as we have grown up in your house, all we've ever known is wake up at this time, do this, do that, do this, do that. And not that there hasn't been any thinking on our end, where it was very much encouraged, but that we know what was expected. And living a life that is, here's what this person expects, not in an imbalanced way, but in the proper way. If someone's lazy in their walk with the Lord, that won't transfer to the correct place when you are the one responsible. When you're the one who it rises and falls on. When I get to heaven, I'm the one who's going to have to answer for my family. And that's the biggest thing I could say about the situation. Is not that there aren't times when I look at things that I do and go, this is only because I'm being told I wouldn't do this. And that I don't look at times and go, frankly, I feel like this is God's will, and we're going to have a discussion about it. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to say, it's what I think God wants, and we'll get to that. I think it's you honestly said it. It's a balance. It's a balancing act. We're learning. I mean, never had 2 married sons. You know, this is all you guys are freshly married, so it's like everything's new. And I think if we as Christians, it doesn't matter which side we're on, don't give the other side the grace to maybe me looking at myself and going, well, that was a dumb, kind of like you said. How many times have you ignored that advice and it's gone well? And as you said, well, not always, but doesn't mean it's always good or always bad. And that's where when you're the head of the household, you got to be willing to be like, yep, I messed up on that one, or no, this is what God wanted. And, in hindsight, where we were looking at it back then, we didn't have all the information, but I'm glad I did what God asked, because God's shown that. And I think that's probably the most challenging part of being a good Christian and working with family and working with a strong boss. Because I think it's funny, you said a couple of weeks ago, you're like, I raised you all to be leaders. What a mess a church staff is when everybody's the leader, right? It's like everybody's got their 2 cents. It'd be better if we were all just whatever you say.
Zombies.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier. But it's not. We're
Mom
reeds.
used to always tell me,
so.
what do you want, a blonde?
Did you want to marry a dumb blonde?
Yeah.
Well, don't say that to Hope, because she's not a dumb blonde.
She's not dumb.
No, not at all.
I'd just get mad at her all the time because she would tell me how she thought about things that I was passionate about, and it was on the opposite side. And it was like,
Why can't you just agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever you want.
Yeah. And I said, no, that's not what I want. I want you to talk to me.
What do you want?
So she's like, what do you want to marry to, a blonde with shoulder pads? No, tell me what you think, but try to be nicer about it.
That's my 2 cents.
That's
David?
Mine is infant's 2 cents, because I've only been married 6 months. But I think what Peter said was good when he talked about unique. I think our church is unique, partially obviously because it's small and we also do so much, but also one of the reasons you don't see a lot of family working together on staff for long periods of time is because it's not easy to do. There's a saying, familiarity breeds contempt, and I think that contempt is what eats away at relationships. And so,
and it goes 2 ways. The pastor can become filled with contempt, and the followers can. So.
Yep, goes both ways. And so I think the relationships have to be protected, not by running away and being hermits, necessarily, but I do think, obviously, respecting each other's bounds, but respecting.
That's why I got a camper.
Exactly. Yeah, I think respecting it. I think
you out to travel.
Learning to respect everyone's boundaries is something that's very difficult to do. I know on my part, one of the things I feel like I struggle with sometimes is when to treat dad, when to treat him as pastor, when to treat him as best friend. And there can be times where you're just goofing off, and then it's like, oops, nope, I'm supposed to be treating him as pastor at that moment. So I think balancing that, figuring that out is like trying to learn how to walk.
In all fairness, as you figuring that on your side, I'm listening on my side. Sometimes I'm not listening in the right role either. I didn't know you were talking as a friend. And so maybe I shouldn't wear my feelings on my shoulders, or however you say that, on your sleeves. But it's all the way around. Bottom line is, I want sons and son-in-laws, hopefully one's coming here in the future, son-in-laws that are, I'm not talking about just being leaders. I'm talking about are good husbands to their wives and family men who sometimes it's frustrating for me because I feel like we should already be on the same page, but that's not reality. Reality isn't, we're not always going to be on the same page because each one of you are different men. And some of you were sleeping during the lessons. And so it's just, that's the way it is. And you all are married to different women who, I've been married for 33 years, and I know my wife's voice is in my ear all the time. Even when I'm by myself, I'm trying to make decisions that not just so much it would please her, but if they would please her and they're right, then I would want to do that. So, but I want all of the men in my family to know the joy of being married to a godly woman, having good godly children, and to be able to sit back someday and say, I made some very good decisions. And the ones where I didn't make good decisions, I made a good decision to get that straightened out and fixed. So that's the only reason I asked the question. Finding your mate's important, but being the right kind of leader as well is important too. So if there are no other questions, I think we can.
I think we're good to go. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of The Brook. We hope you'll join us again next week. Same time at same place for another fun-filled show. I believe we may have a special guest with us next week. Maybe. Brother Tyson's going to be here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Oh, it's on entertainment. That's right.
That's why he's going to be here.
That's right.
We wanted to bring in the
Entertainment.
Bring in the clowns.
I'll let you say it. I didn't want to finish it. Respect my elders.
David, Pastor, Peter, Mrs. Reeves, Jewel, Courtney, Kaylee, and JT, thank you for a great episode. You will find all of the episodes for this season on YouTube and anywhere podcasts can be listened to. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you joined us today on YouTube. And with that, we will play the final requested song, We Will Stand Our Ground by Glory Bound. This song was requested by Gabriel Smith. We'll see you all next week.